A man on a television screen articulated a common saying about desiring wealth without public recognition. Hyun Sangyoon introduced himself as the grandson of Sunghyun Group's chairman Hyun Byung-jeon and the youngest son of vice chairman Hyun Deok-jae, declaring he was born with a diamond spoon. However, Sangyoon lamented that too many people in Korea already knew who he was, reflecting on the intrusive fame he faced, even at his middle school entrance ceremony. He mused that his immense inherited wealth and his unwanted fame were two inseparable sides of the same coin. With this realization, Sangyoon began to formulate a strategic plan. His first step involved deliberately making mistakes on an exam paper, ensuring he never appeared too capable. Sangyoon reasoned that showing outstanding ability would draw the attention of powerful figures in the group, forcing him into an unwelcome succession battle. He then outlined his second step: he couldn't appear completely useless either. Sangyoon explained that in his family, ability, not merely position, determined worth, as incompetent individuals were immediately cast aside. He emphasized the ruthless nature of his grandfather, Chairman Hyun Byung-jeon, the formidable head of Sunghyun. Sangyoon reflected that any sign of incompetence would lead to him being treated worse than a new intern within their powerful chaebol structure. The narrative described the Sunghyun Group's cutthroat philosophy as the very foundation of its immense success, with Sangyoon looking up at the imposing skyscraper. Sangyoon revealed the cunning goal of his plan: to be just capable enough to inherit a building in Gangnam, but not so skilled as to be entrusted with an affiliate company. His ultimate aspiration was to become a wealthy, unemployed person, content and free from corporate responsibilities. The scene then shifted to the exterior of a school building as an implied teacher began addressing a class. A male teacher proudly announced that Hyun Sangyoon had scored 301 on the academic ability test, placing first in their class, prompting applause from the students. The male teacher confirmed Sangyoon's intention to apply to Hankook University, assuring him that admission was practically guaranteed with his score. With sparkling eyes, the male teacher eagerly inquired which department Sangyoon intended to enter, hinting at familial expectations. Sangyoon responded evasively, stating he was unsure about his chosen department. After the male teacher suggested the College of Commerce and Economics at Hankook University, Sangyoon revealed he already had a specific department in mind. With dramatic flair, Sangyoon declared his intention to attend the Department of Law. The male teacher reacted with utter shock, while students murmured in disbelief at Sangyoon's surprising choice. Sangyoon internally noted the expected reaction, explaining that his score of 301 was intentionally just below the 320 needed for Hankook University's College of Law, ensuring his guaranteed failure for that specific department. He elaborated on his first plan, which involved intentionally targeting a score that was barely short of Hankook University's College of Law, yet high enough for their College of Commerce and Economics. His backup plan was to fail the early recruitment for Hankook University College of Law and then enroll in Anseong University's Department of Law. Sangyoon thought that while his grandfather might not be thrilled, Anseong University would be an acceptable fallback. He gloated, believing his ambiguous score and planned failure at Hankook University College of Law constituted his perfect strategy, or so he thought. Unexpectedly, an acceptance letter from Hankook University was shown, undermining Sangyoon's perfect plan. Sangyoon reacted with wide-eyed shock as he looked at the acceptance letter. Still holding the paper, Sangyoon questioned the turn of events as a news report on early college admissions played on a nearby television. A news anchor reported on Hankook University's Department of Law facing an unprecedented under-enrollment and revising its admission guidelines for the first time in 30 years. The report concluded that due to the under-enrollment, almost all applicants, except those scoring under 100 points, would be admitted. Sangyoon screamed in anguish, realizing his first plan had utterly failed. Meanwhile, Chairman Hyun Byung-jeon laughed heartily, his booming laughter filling the air. The chairman, with an aura of immense pride, expressed his satisfaction to an unseen individual. Surrounded by other older men bragging about their children's university admissions, Chairman Hyun Byung-jeon revealed his exasperation with their constant boasts. Hyun Deok-jae's wife politely responded to the chairman's outburst, while Hyun Deok-jae internally reflected on his son's unexpected success. The chairman dismissively waved off his earlier passionate remark as merely a figure of speech. The chairman dramatically declared his expectation for Sangyoon to become a chief prosecutor and even the prosecutor general, shocking Sangyoon and his parents. Sangyoon internally panicked, wondering why his family was dictating his career path when he hadn't even dreamed of such a future. The chairman questioned why Sangyoon should pursue such a path, while Vice Chairman Hyun Deok-jae reluctantly agreed to support it if it benefited Sunghyun. The chairman vehemently rejected the idea of Sangyoon becoming a judge, a stance that internally delighted Sangyoon. The chairman then declared Sangyoon the pillar of the family and scolded him for even considering a mere legal professional role, overwhelming Sangyoon with this unexpected responsibility. Despite Sangyoon's distress, his parents smiled contentedly, thanking the chairman for his high expectations of their son. The chairman then asked Hyun Deok-jae if he was heading to the office, and Deok-jae agreed to accompany him. As they prepared to leave, the chairman called out to Sangyoon. The chairman, looking directly at Sangyoon, affectionately offered him pocket money. Sangyoon politely declined his grandfather's offer with a bow. The chairman praised Sangyoon as a good lad and affectionately patted his head, while Sangyoon internally pleaded for him to stop. Sangyoon internally expressed his profound desire for his grandfather to stop smothering him with attention. Unable to voice his true feelings, Sangyoon politely thanked his grandfather and announced his departure. Sangyoon reflected on the precariousness of his position, knowing that one wrong word could make even his meager status disappear like dust. Chairman Hyun Byung-jeon was portrayed as the absolute ruler, the emperor of Sunghyun, capable of easily stripping Sangyoon of his status. A luxurious black car sped along a multi-lane road. Chairman Hyun Byung-jeon and Hyun Deok-jae were seated in the back of the moving car. Hyun Deok-jae looked confused as the chairman unexpectedly asked for his opinion. The chairman clarified that he was asking about his grandson, Sangyoon. Hyun Deok-jae tried to downplay Sangyoon's maturity, stating that he was still only 20 years old. The chairman challenged Deok-jae's assessment with a stern gaze, making Deok-jae visibly nervous. The chairman called out to Deok-jae, who responded obediently. The chairman posed a philosophical question about the true purpose of running a business, catching Hyun Deok-jae off guard. He continued his rhetorical questions, asking if the purpose was to deliver customer value or create jobs. The chairman added another rhetorical question, asking if the purpose was to contribute to society. He then firmly stated that the sole purpose of business was to make money by buying low and selling high to turn a profit. The chairman claimed that Sangyoon was already putting these profit-driven principles into practice, further confusing Hyun Deok-jae. He explained that Sangyoon had taken the exam with the absolute minimum effort. The chairman praised Sangyoon's strategic brilliance, stating he had secured his acceptance to Hankook University College of Law with the bare minimum score, equating it to good business practice that he figured out on his own. Hyun Deok-jae tried to dismiss Sangyoon's achievement as mere luck, but the chairman interrupted him. The chairman dramatically declared that if Sangyoon's success was truly luck, he would hand Sunghyun over to him instantly, shocking Hyun Deok-jae. The chairman emphasized the immense value of such luck as the car pulled up to the Grand Sunghyun Group building. As they walked, the chairman confronted Hyun Deok-jae, asserting that luck could surpass 100 smart, hardworking individuals. The chairman called out to Hyun Deok-jae in the spacious office lobby. The chairman then instructed Hyun Deok-jae to assign someone sharp and flexible to Sangyoon. Hyun Deok-jae voiced his concern that Sangyoon was still too young to begin working. The chairman sternly dismissed Deok-jae's objection, asserting that if Sangyoon had any brains, he would find something useful to do on his own. Sangyoon, in a fit of frustration, punched a wall. Sangyoon internally realized that his strategic failure had unintentionally earned him too many points with the chairman. He lamented that his grandfather's praise, including being called the pillar of the family, meant his plan for wealthy unemployment was severely compromised. Suddenly, a rotary phone rang loudly in the room, drawing Sangyoon's attention. Sangyoon answered the phone, and the caller identified himself as Chief Ju Yong-hoon of the Secretariat. The narration introduced Chief Ju as a key figure assisting the chairman and the only employee Hyun Deok-jae privately called brother. Sangyoon internally wondered why such an important person as Chief Ju was calling him out of the blue. Sangyoon politely asked Chief Ju the reason for his call, and Chief Ju informed him of the chairman's order to assign a secretariat employee to assist him. Chief Ju offered to make the arrangements immediately, and Sangyoon agreed, but internally expressed disbelief and questioned his grandfather's true intentions for assigning a Sunghyun secretariat employee to him. Chief Ju then added that the chairman wished to give Sangyoon a gift to celebrate his university admission. Sangyoon reacted with surprise to the mention of a gift from his grandfather. Hyun Sangyoon processed Chief Ju Yong-hoon's message that his grandfather offered a gift, allowing him to choose it himself, and Chief Ju would report his decision immediately. Chief Ju Yong-hoon added that if Hyun Sangyoon struggled to decide, he could inform the staff member assigned to him later. Hyun Sangyoon playfully considered a grand, extravagant choice, envisioning a magnificent building and a bold, ha-ha-ha accompanying the thought. Hyun Sangyoon remained silent, still holding the phone, lost in deep contemplation. He then firmly decided, no. A wave of panic washed over Hyun Sangyoon as he realized the gift was a test, fearing that appearing too greedy would ruin everything. Maintaining a composed exterior, Hyun Sangyoon informed Chief Ju that he would consider it further and relay his decision through the assigned staff member. With a soft tuck, Hyun Sangyoon hung up, smugly strategizing to choose a gift that would neither appear materialistic nor raise his grandfather's estimation of him. The scene shifted to a grand traditional residence where Hyun Sangyoon's eldest uncle, Hyun Sungjae, praised him, saying, our Sangyoon did a great job. Hyun Sangyoon politely thanked his uncle, sitting opposite him at a dark wooden table. Hyun Sungjae, president of Sunghyun Corporation, chuckled with a hungyo, boasting that Hyun Sangyoon was better than 10 of my useless kids combined. Hyun Woo-jae, president of Sunghyun General Chemical, questioned why his children were being included, while Hyun Hee-jae, president of Sunghyun Department Store, coyly defended her young daughter Ju-yoon from the comparison. The family members then shifted their discussion to Hyun Tae-yoon, wondering why he hadn't called from New York. Hyun Hee-jae defended Tae-yoon's silence, claiming he was too busy studying, but Hyun Sangyoon knew the real reason was far different. Hyun Sangyoon revealed that his cousin, Hyun Tae-yoon, was merely enrolled at New York University on paper and spent his days and nights partying and clubbing with a boisterous Hyun Sangyoon inwardly concluded that if his grandfather discovered the truth, Tae-yoon would be dead meat, but as long as he wasn't caught, it didn't matter. Suddenly, a servant announced with a sharp exclamation, "The chairman is coming." The family immediately stood with a beoltik as Chairman Hyun Byung-jeon entered, then quickly sat down with a beek at his command. Hyun Byung-jeon graciously thanked everyone for gathering on such short notice. With a teal-sik and a suk, Chairman Hyun Byung-jeon settled in, announcing that the reason for their gathering was to celebrate the good news about his grandson, Sangyoon. Hyun Sangyoon's internal alarm blared, realizing this celebration was yet also a test. His hands gripped kwak and trembled tiol as Hyun Sangyoon desperately tried to convince himself to appear completely calm and natural. Hyun Byung-jeon called out to him, "Now, Sangyoon," and the young man respectfully replied, "Yes, grandfather." Hyun Byung-jeon, with a cunning smile, inquired if Sangyoon had heard about his admission gift from Chief Ju. As Hyun Byung-jeon asked if he had thought about the gift, Hyun Sangyoon fumed internally that Tae-yoon hadn't even received congratulations for New York University. Hyun Sangyoon's mind raced, recalling Chief Ju's explicit instruction to inform the staff member later, realizing this was a premature demand. He hardened his resolve, deciding, no, this was no time to hesitate, he had to act now. With newfound composure, Hyun Sangyoon affirmed, "Yes, I've thought about it, grandfather." Hyun Byung-jeon leaned forward, eager to know, "What is it? Tell me." With a dramatic "da-dung" and "kung," Hyun Sangyoon boldly declared his desired gift, a building in Gangnam. Hyun Woo-jae and Hyun Hee-jae gasped, stunned by the audacity of his request, echoing, Gangnam. Hyun Sangyoon started to exclaim, build dash, his surprise evident. The assistant finished the exclamation, ing, while Hyun Sangyoon's face held a sly, cunning smirk. Hyun Sangyoon then clarified, please build a new building for our College of Law, slyly presenting a carefully chosen gift, shameless, yet somehow not looking shameless. Internally, Hyun Sangyoon acknowledged his slight personal motive and the technicality that Hankuk University, being south of the Han River, qualified it as a Gangnam building. Hyun Byung-jeon's eyebrow subtly raised with a silic as he uttered an intrigued "oh-jo." He thoughtfully repeated, a university building, processing the implications of the unconventional request. The entire room erupted in hearty laughter, led by Hyun Byung-jeon himself. Hyun Woo-jae and Hyun Hee-jae shared an impressed chuckle, clearly amused by Sangyoon's cleverness. Hyun Byung-jeon smiled knowingly, I see. Later, in his private study, Hyun Byung-jeon's assistant entered, asking, did you call for me? Hyun Byung-jeon addressed Chief Ju Yong-hoon, who promptly replied, yes, Sir. About Sangyoon, Hyun Byung-jeon began, what do kids his age usually want the most? Hyun Byung-jeon quickly clarified, no, not the young master. I mean ordinary kids his age. Chief Ju Yong-hoon confidently listed imported cars or luxury goods as the most popular choices for young people Sangyoon's age. Right. Exactly, Hyun Byung-jeon confirmed, gripping his chair, cars or luxury goods. A thoughtful expression crossed Hyun Byung-jeon's face as he mused, but a university building. Did I just get outplayed? Hyun Sangyoon later read a newspaper article detailing the Sunghyun Foundation's whooping 600 million won donation for Hankuk University College of Law's library. With a smug kukuk, Hyun Sangyoon realized, this is perfect, having successfully portrayed a grandson with zero economic sense, costing his grandfather 600 million won. He mentally declared the score, tied at 1-1, believing his perceived lack of financial sense had equalized his prior achievement of getting into Hankuk University. His eyes narrowed, contemplating his next move. Next is Plan B. Hyun Sangyoon's Plan B involved intentionally letting his grades slip and acting like he couldn't adjust to college life. He chuckled kukuk gleefully, convinced this plan is absolutely perfect for lowering his grandfather's expectations. The driver called Hyun Sangyoon to depart for school, assuring him, okay, I'm coming. With a click-tack of his seatbelt, Hyun Sangyoon grumbled that he could have gone to orientation on his own, but the driver politely dismissed the thought. Lee Byum-suk, the driver, explained that taking the subway would involve a grueling 30-minute walk up a mountain path from the station. Hyun Sangyoon expressed disbelief, pointing out the station was literally named Hankuk University Station. The driver, Lee Byum-suk, smugly corrected him, it's only entrance in name. None of the students actually use it. Hyun Sangyoon narrowed his eyes, wondering, how do you know that? A sudden ding of realization hit Hyun Sangyoon as he stared at the driver's sly smile in the rearview mirror. Lee Byum-suk, assistant manager in the Sunghyun Secretariat, confirmed Hyun Sangyoon's dawning suspicion, proudly revealing he was a Hankuk University Law Department alumnus and, therefore, his senior. Hyun Sangyoon's face paled as he recalled his grandfather's ominous words from dinner, your grandfather really picked the perfect opponent, realizing with horror, this is what he meant. Hyun Sangyoon's panic intensified as Lee Byum-suk cheerfully explained the chairman had ordered him to help if Hyun Sangyoon ever had trouble with his studies. Lee Byum-suk delivered the crushing blow, adding that he was strictly instructed me not to let your grades drop. A pajik and chwak of internal despair signaled the complete collapse of my Plan B. For Hyun Sangyoon. Hyun Sangyoon imagined a furious chairman Hyun Byung-jeon, eyes glowing orange, screaming that a hopeless punk like you doesn't even deserve a single building. Hyun Sangyoon slumped, lamenting the utter annihilation of my perfect Plan B. Before his eyes, the symbolic Gangnam the hill building began to crack and crumble with a geogeek under a blood-red sky. More cracks echoed geogeek, accompanied by a low EU as the building continued its terrifying collapse. Overwhelmed, Hyun Sangyoon clutched his head as his grand plans crumbled around him with a "Where'u?" Lee Byum-suk, noticing Hyun Sangyoon's dazed, ghostly appearance, asked with concern, "Young master. Are you okay?" Still in shock, Hyun Sangyoon unconvincingly mumbled, I'm fine. Let's just go for now." As the car drove towards the Hankook University orientation, Hyun Sangyoon knew he desperately needed to devise a plan C. The man with dark hair inwardly pondered what the unseen individual could possibly be thinking, while the woman with brown hair dismissed his concerns as an overreaction. The man with dark hair remarked on the inscrutability of their target, comparing him to their oldest brother, a sentiment the man with gray hair promptly agreed with, calling the situation weird. Holding his teacup, the man with gray hair queried what exactly made the situation so strange. The man with dark hair detailed his suspicions, explaining how the previously quiet kid had suddenly gotten into Hankook University's College of Law and, when offered a reward, requested a new university building instead of something personal like a house or car, asking if that wasn't odd. A wave of frustration washed over the woman with brown hair as she exclaimed, "Oh, you simpleton," in response to the man with dark hair's dismissive question, "Does it have TOB?" The man with dark hair, now intensely serious, voiced his suspicion that the student was strategically buying their favor from the start to win them over, referring to the top-tier classmates from Hankook University's College of Law. The man with gray hair questioned what could be wrong with generosity towards just kids, prompting Hyun Hee-jae to address him as brother. The man with gray hair looked slightly taken aback, asking, "What now?" Hyun Hee-jae confidently explained that while they might be young now, cultivating these relationships early would secure powerful allies for the future. A traditional Korean mansion stood majestically under a bright sky, serving as a silent testament to Hyun Hee-jae's inner conviction that true strength was built from the foundation, not from superficial appearances. The man with dark hair scoffed dismissively, sarcastically labeling them master strategists for worrying about a building that had yet to be designed. With a slight smirk, the man with dark hair retorted that they should tend to their own leaking basements before criticizing others. He then pointedly singled out, especially you, Sungjae, causing the man with gray hair, now identified as Sungjae, to recoil in visible shock. A snicker escaped the man with dark hair as he revealed the secretariat was in an uproar over Taeyun being unreachable, jokingly speculating he was making another grandchild for us. Enraged, Sungjae sprang up, yelling, "What? You punk! Watch your mouth," while the man with dark hair, completely unfazed, simply announced, "I'm leaving." Hyun Hee-jae casually dismissed the departing Woo-jae as simple-minded, as Sungjae, still trembling with frustration, begrudgingly decided to accept that their nephew had gotten into a good university. Hyun Hee-jae then announced her own departure and gracefully walked away, leaving a fuming Sungjae alone at the table. Alone, Sungjae looked down, defeated and drenched in sweat, reflecting the weight of the tense conversation. As the new year dawned, a young girl, dressed in a traditional hanbok, joyfully greeted her grandfather from within a grand Korean house. The grandfather, now identified as Older Man 1, warmly returned the New Year's greeting to the young girl, Ji-yoon, amidst a gathering of other family members. The narration explained that for the Sunghyun chaebol family, holiday events were conducted on a scale far grander and more solemn than any ordinary household, as many suited men stood in formation. The chairman's absolute rule dictated that everyone eat rice cake soup together, a tradition so strict that even grandchildren abroad were no exception, yet two young men privately thought, "When is this going to end? And I'm bored to death." Suddenly, the young men snapped to attention, beads of sweat forming on their brows, as the chairman commanded, "Listen up." The chairman, his expression stern, began his address by declaring he would not offer them any cliché New Year's wishes. He delivered a powerful speech, asserting that a true leader creates and shares fortune, never waiting for it, and reminded them that their every action set an example for all Sunghyun executives and employees. The chairman's voice boomed as he demanded, "Do you understand?" 3 young men in suits responded in unison, a chorus of eager yet nervous, "Yes, grandfather." The chairman then singled out Do-yoon, who, startled, immediately affirmed his presence as the chairman commanded him to step forward. The chairman reminded Do-yoon of his status as Sunghyun's eldest grandson and instructed him to outline his plans for the coming year. Do-yoon stammered nervously, struggling to articulate his plans before settling on a meek, I will study hard." The chairman's eyes narrowed, betraying his clear skepticism at Do-yoon's uninspired response. Do-yoon tried to elaborate further, but the chairman curtly cut him off, stating, "That's enough." With palpable displeasure, the chairman dismissed Do-yoon and called for, next, Jong-yoon, admonishing him that, just stuttering isn't enough. As Jong-yoon struggled to articulate a vision, internalizing the criticism of having a face devoid of vision and a weak-willed attitude, the chairman roared, "Enough. Next. Hyun Sangyoon, observing the others faltering, inwardly smirked, confident that while their answers earned them demerits, he was in a different league. He mentally tallied his massive bonus points from getting into Hankook University College of Law, believing he was too far ahead to lose his lead even if he acted like the others, though he briefly acknowledged the rumors surrounding his admission. The chairman's angry shout of Sanghyun jolted Hyun Sangyoon, who resolved internally, "I have to do something, fast." Hyun Sangyoon, composed, immediately addressed the chairman, expressing his gratitude for the swift commencement of construction on their law school building. The chairman, surprised, questioned if construction had already begun, thinking to himself, "That was fast," while Hyun Sangyoon confirmed, "Yes, grandfather." Groundbreaking began on January 3 of this year. Acknowledging the news, the chairman then directly asked Hyun Sangyoon for his own plan. Hyun Sangyoon began to articulate his strategy, saying, "My plan is..." He declared his plan was to make a lot of friends, just like everyone else, now that he was in college, prompting the chairman to curiously ask, "Oh? And why is that?" Hyun Sangyoon explained with a determined expression that since he lacked money, the only resource I can access right now is human resources. He then emphasized his good fortune in being admitted to Hankook University, a place full of talented people. Hyun Sangyoon concluded that making many friends at the university was the best path for him, as the chairman listened thoughtfully. A subtle shift, like a crack or snap, appeared in the chairman's eye, signaling a profound internal reaction. Internally, the chairman raged, believing Hyun Sangyoon, whom he had thought merely soft, was now only concerned with playing around with friends. His furious internal monologue continued, harshly condemning Hyun Sangyoon as a pathetic fool, unfit to run a company. The chairman's internal rage culminated in an imagined command to just take a single building and scrap by for the rest of your life, reprimand Hyun Sangyoon nervously anticipated, thinking, "Is what he'll say, right?" The chairman's jaw remained tightly clenched, a silent indicator of his suppressed fury. Then, to Hyun Sangyoon's surprise, the chairman's mouth widened into an unexpected, unsettling smile. With a sudden sparkle, the chairman boomed, "As expected, our Sangyoon is a deep thinker," leaving Hyun Sangyoon utterly baffled and muttering, "Huh." The chairman then turned to Chief Ju, inviting him to look at this kid, to which Chief Ju Yong-hoon immediately agreed, "Yes, chairman." A wave of laughter filled the air as the chairman and Chief Ju Yong-hoon exchanged thoughts, praising Hyun Sangyoon's impressive spirit and the chairman's sharp judgment, utterly bewildering Hyun Sangyoon, who wondered, what is this reaction? The chairman, seemingly satisfied, dismissed Hyun Sangyoon, telling him to return to his seat, but Hyun Sangyoon began a hesitant protest, "No." Hyun Sangyoon hesitated, then clenched his fist, a determined resolve forming within him, "I can't back down like this. Before it's too late, I have to make a risky move." Turning back, Hyun Sangyoon hesitantly addressed the chairman again, "Grandfather." The chairman looked at him, asking if he had something else to say, pointedly reminding him that he had already stated his own plan. With a challenging gaze, Hyun Sangyoon then boldly reversed the question, asking, "So, what is your plan, grandfather?" A collective shock rippled through the room, eliciting wide-eyed surprise from every family member present. The chairman, visibly taken aback, began to question, "Are you?" With electrical sparks seeming to emanate from him, the chairman completed his question, expressing utter shock and incredulity, asking me to tell you my plan. The chairman, Hyun Byung-jian, smirked from his armchair, echoing Hyun Sangyoon's audacious question about his plans. A man with dark hair recoiled in shock, wondering if Hyun Sangyoon had lost his mind, while a woman with brown hair gasped in disbelief. 3 young men in suits stood frozen, utterly bewildered by Hyun Sangyoon's blatant disrespect toward the chairman. Hyun Deok-jae's wife whispered Sangyoon's name with deep concern, her husband looking equally troubled beside her. Hyun Byung-jian sat in silence, observing the room, internally questioning if this bold move from Hyun Sangyoon was truly a significant misstep. Hyun Sangyoon, a mischievous smirk playing on his lips, inwardly fretted that he might have pushed his luck too far. The chairman's lips curled into a subtle, knowing smile as he let out a soft laugh. Suddenly, Hyun Byung-jian burst into boisterous laughter, his head tilted back in genuine amusement. Hyun Sangyoon stood utterly bewildered, his eyes wide with shock and confusion. With a continuing chuckle, Hyun Byung-jian repeated Hyun Sangyoon's audacious question, his smirk returning. Hyun Byung-jian declared that the time had come, a sentiment echoed by an older man sitting nearby, both sharing a knowing smirk. Hyun Byung-jian grinned confidently, announcing his decision to reveal his plans. He then stated he could not disclose his plans in the current setting, adding that Chief Ju Yong-hoon would soon make contact, causing Chief Ju Yong-hoon to visibly flinch. Hyun Sangyoon's mind reeled in astonishment, questioning whether his grandfather truly intended to share his secrets. A fiery aura erupted around Hyun Deok-jae, his eyes glowing red in a trembling rage, causing his wife and a young man to flinch as Hyun Sangyoon called out. Hyun Deok-jae nervously addressed the chairman, who responded with a slight wave and a smile. Hyun Byung-jian, his fists clenched, roared that they were at home and demanded to be called grandfather. Still sweating nervously, Hyun Deok-jae desperately pleaded with his grandfather to share his plans as well. With narrowed eyes and gritted teeth, Hyun Byung-jian sharply reminded them of his previous words. Hyun Byung-jian stood, his arm outstretched, furiously chastising the dejected young men for their lack of risk-taking, declaring they had no right to know. The chairman's determined shout echoed as a hand pointed towards Hyun Sangyoon, identifying him as the sole qualified individual. Hyun Byung-jian declared, "Is Sangyoon," causing Hyun Sangyoon's heart to thump in wide-eyed, blushing disbelief as he wondered how his plan had succeeded. Hyun Sangyoon's eyes widened in surprise, wondering why a monthly meeting had suddenly been scheduled. His assistant calmly relayed instructions from Chief Ju Yong-hoon for Hyun Sangyoon to attend a meeting on the first Wednesday of the month. The assistant clarified that it was the chairman's orders, prompting Hyun Sangyoon to realize this was his grandfather's response and hypothesized the meeting would unveil Sungyeon's annual business direction. A gasp escaped Hyun Sangyoon's lips as his clenched fist slammed onto the table, a resolute determination to prepare washing over him. Hyun Sangyoon called out to his assistant. He then informed the assistant that a substantial amount of work awaited him, to which the assistant respectfully affirmed. Hyun Sangyoon began to lay out his demands, starting with the current status and financial statements of all subsidiaries and a decade's worth of projects. With narrowed, determined eyes, he instructed his assistant to focus on all major projects, successful or failed, and bring the reports to him. Hyun Sangyoon sat contemplatively at his desk, acknowledging the critical need for thorough preparation this time. He imagined an awkward scenario, hesitating and scratching his head under his grandfather's proud gaze and the executive scrutiny, if he failed to answer a question. His imagination then shifted to a terrifying vision of his grandfather, eyes glowing red with fury and surrounded by crackling electricity, towering over a small, overwhelmed Hyun Sangyoon whose world shattered. With a confident smile and a clatter, Hyun Sangyoon set a firm deadline. He needed everything ready by the weekend. The assistant saluted with a determined smile, pledging to pull all-nighters if necessary to meet the demand. The assistant then inquired if anything else was needed, to which Hyun Sangyoon confirmed there was. The assistant proudly announced he had already scouted and booked a great venue for next Friday, complete with contact information, prompting a surprised internal thought from Hyun Sangyoon. The assistant described the chosen, Grand Hotel, as the perfect venue for college students, striking a balance between extravagance and affordability. Hyun Sangyoon thoughtfully confirmed the number of freshmen, sparking the assistant's curiosity about his question. Hyun Sangyoon, with a serious expression, instructed him to book the venue for everyone, causing the assistant's jaw to drop in shock. The assistant nervously began to protest about the exorbitant cost, but Hyun Sangyoon calmly cut him off, declaring it didn't matter. Hyun Sangyoon, a confident smirk on his face, declared his ambitious plan to turn all his Hankook University classmates into his loyal followers. He then expanded his strategy, instructing the assistant to organize similar sponsored events for all colleges at Hankook University under Sungyeon's name and to begin immediately. Scenes of bustling university life unfolded, with students happily interacting and staff in suits overseeing events. Hyun Sangyoon and his assistant walked together, the former narrating that those had been incredibly busy days. The vast ballroom of the Han River Hotel in Gangnam buzzed with activity, filled with freshmen from Hankook University's 15 colleges, a monumental gathering. The phone rang repeatedly as assistant manager Lee Byum-suk, slightly tired but content, handled the bulk of the hard work, confirming plans with an off-panel Hyun Sangyoon. The exorbitant cost of the events, enough to purchase several houses in Gangnam, surely meant his grandfather would be informed. Hyun Sangyoon nervously mused that even his proud grandfather would be disappointed by the massive expenses, just as his assistant subtly chuckled and directed his attention elsewhere. At the main gate, staff in suits happily distributed the matriculation gifts Hyun Sangyoon had orchestrated to every student. The assistant, impressed, noted the bold decision to give over 6,000 freshmen Swiss watches emblazoned with the Sunghyun logo, to which Hyun Sangyoon clarified he used his own money. Hyun Sangyoon triumphantly explained his cunning strategy. He had emptied his personal savings for the watches, branded with the Sunghyun logo for promotion, anticipating his grandfather's grudging approval and calling it, killing two birds with one stone. Hyun Sangyoon inquired about his parents, and the assistant informed him that the vice chairman and his wife would attend the ceremony directly after their meeting concluded. Hyun Sangyoon then asked about the chairman, but the assistant had no information from Chief Ju. A self-satisfied smirk crossed Hyun Sangyoon's face as he concluded his grandfather wouldn't attend due to disappointment, exactly as he expected. Hyun Sangyoon inwardly triumphed as an announcement blared over the loudspeakers, instructing students to take their seats for the impending entrance ceremony. The assistant bowed to a composed Hyun Sangyoon, stating he would wait outside until the ceremony concluded. A male teacher, smiling warmly, began his address into the microphone. The teacher excitedly announced a very special, hard-to-invite guest to congratulate the freshmen, as heavy footsteps approached the stage. As the teacher called for applause, Hyun Sangyoon, off-panel, wondered who this mysterious guest could be. Hyun Sangyoon's eye widened dramatically, a silent scream of shock. The teacher proudly introduced Chairman Hyun Byung-jeon, leader of Sunghyun Group, who then greeted the audience with a broad smile. Chairman Hyun Byung-jeon, smiling warmly, revealed the reason for his unexpected appearance: his grandson would be among the freshmen. Hyun Sangyoon stared, utterly stunned, as he murmured, "Grandfather." Newspaper articles detailed Chairman Hyun Byung-jeon's notable congratulatory speech at Hankook University's entrance ceremony, where he emphasized the importance of becoming multi-talented individuals whom Sungyeon would always support. Hyun Sangyoon sat in an armchair, reading the newspaper with a look of profound surprise, wondering what on earth he was seeing. He questioned his grandfather's reaction, finding it utterly unlike the chairman he knew, especially after his recent nonsense expenditures, while recalling the chairman's image at the university event. A troubled Hyun Sangyoon pondered if his enrollment in Hankook University College of Law was the underlying problem, sensing that something strange was happening as his calculations kept going wrong. He felt as though he was riding a tiger, a metaphorical situation implying that once one embarks on such a journey, it becomes difficult to dismount. Hyun Sangyoon acknowledged that this precarious, tiger-riding, situation precisely described his current predicament. He mused that his dream was simply to inherit a building and live off it, but the complicating factor was that the building in question was the towering Sangyoon headquarters itself. A soft knock sounded at the door, and assistant manager Lee Byum-suk announced himself, receiving an immediate invitation to enter. With a soft thud, a book was placed on a desk, signaling the conclusion of the tutoring sessions. The implied teacher confidently assured Hyun Sangyoon that his preparatory work was more than sufficient, and that the young master would now commence his real classes at school without any trouble, given his observed skills. However, the implied teacher paused, prompting a chibi-formed Hyun Sangyoon to question the abrupt hesitation. The implied teacher then sternly warned Hyun Sangyoon to be very careful, as the university was teeming with monsters. Hyun Sangyoon, confused, recalled how everyone at the entrance ceremony had appeared rather nice, internally noting their academic god sense, thick glasses, tattered textbooks, and plaid shirts. The implied teacher clarified that these seemingly nice students were actually top scholars from across the country who didn't play nice when it came to studying, a sentiment he inwardly applied to himself, which Hyun Sangyoon then understood. Noticing a new book, the implied teacher inquired about its contents. Upon reading the title, Basic Semiconductor Theory, the implied teacher, in chibi form, questioned Hyun Sangyoon about the sudden acquisition of such a specific book. Hyun Sangyoon responded vaguely with a shrug and a wide, evasive smile. He then asked if he had been studying law recently, which the implied teacher confirmed. With a confident smirk, Hyun Sangyoon asserted that being in law school did not legally restrict him to studying only law, catching the implied teacher off guard with a gasp and an alarmed protest. Hyun Sangyoon further suggested inviting senior students from various departments at Hankook University to tutor him in other subjects. The implied teacher was rendered speechless by Hyun Sangyoon's proposition to broaden his academic pursuits. Hyun Sangyoon provocatively challenged the implied teacher to continue doubting and questioning his choices, his aura practically radiating mischief. The implied teacher's thoughts conveyed his panic, urging himself to report this to the chief, as he believed medical school was for medicine, engineering for engineering, and law school strictly for law. He found the idea outrageous, imagining Hyun Sangyoon studying engineering and soldering circuit boards while already enrolled in Hankook University College of Law. The implied teacher envisioned a dramatic newspaper article, engulfed in flames, exposing Hyun Sangyoon's absurd engineering activities to the chairman, assuming engineering was the easiest to report. He further interpreted Hyun Sangyoon's actions as a highly calculated move, hoping it would dilute the deep positive impression the chairman had formed at the entrance ceremony. The implied teacher, his eyes wide with horrified realization, addressed Hyun Sangyoon as young master. He then declared that he finally understood, prompting a confused Hyun Sangyoon to inquire what he meant. The implied teacher recalled his initial puzzlement when Hyun Sangyoon kept prioritizing friends over attending the monthly meeting, though he had still followed his orders. But then, the implied teacher explained, he had heard how pleased the chairman was with his congratulatory speech at the entrance ceremony, which made him realize Hyun Sangyoon's big picture strategy all along. Hyun Sangyoon reacted with cartoonish shock and bewilderment to the mention of a big picture. The implied teacher enthusiastically elaborated on this grand vision, suggesting Hyun Sangyoon aimed to not only rank first in law school but also in other departments, a strategy to completely win over the chairman, much to a tiny, panicking Hyun Sangyoon's disbelief. With a resolute thud and sparkling determination, the implied teacher pledged to prepare everything for Hyun Sangyoon. Hyun Sangyoon, still confused, asked what would be prepared, to which the implied teacher announced his plan to bring in top experts from various fields within Sangyoon Group as tutors. The implied teacher's hand reached purposefully for the green, Basic Semiconductor Theory book on the desk. He enthusiastically promised to arrange for a semiconductor tutor, ensuring Hyun Sangyoon would fully understand the subject before the monthly meeting. Hyun Sangyoon sat utterly bewildered, overwhelmed by the implied teacher's elaborate plans. He was rendered completely speechless, his eyes wide with shock. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk walked with determination, a book in hand, setting in motion events that would lead to arduous study until dawn. A close-up displayed assistant manager Lee Byum-suk's official nameplate on his office desk. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk diligently worked at his cubicle desk, surrounded by office supplies. He consulted a list, searching intently for someone, wondering, where is he? Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk reflected that every day had been filled with new and surprising experiences ever since he began serving young master Hyun Sangyoon. He gazed up at the towering Sunghyun building, lost in thought. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk recalled his ambitious nature even before joining the company. Having graduated from Hankook University and given up on the bar exam, he joined Sunghyun with a fierce determination to climb to the very top, marked by his formal welcome into the company. He had worked with extraordinary dedication, as if there were 48 hours in a single day. By his second year, he had become a well-known figure within the company, and by his third, he had entered the secretariat, the very core of Sunghyun. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk shook hands with a man in a dark suit, who cordially greeted him. He even caught the eye of Chief Ju Yong-hoon, Chairman Hyun Byung-jeon's closest aide, who expressed his anticipation of working with him, leading to rumors that assistant manager Lee was the next chief in the making. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk, beaming with optimistic enthusiasm, proclaimed his commitment to doing his absolute best, believing he was walking a path of flowers. But then, his optimistic perception shattered with a sudden, sharp sound, indicating an abrupt change in his fortunes. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk reacted with extreme shock and disbelief upon hearing the name, young master Sangyoon. Chief Ju Yong-hoon informed assistant manager Lee Byum-suk that, considering his educational background, there was no one better suited for the job, expressing his full reliance on him. Chief Ju Yong-hoon then formally assigned assistant manager Lee Byum-suk the task of looking after young master Hyun Sangyoon, the third son of Vice Chairman Hyun Deok-jae, explaining it was the chairman's direct request. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk mentally expressed his deep reluctance, thinking he would have found any way to avoid the assignment if it hadn't been for the chairman's involvement. He questioned why he was assigned to Hyun Sangyoon, who was considered far from the succession line, pondering if he had fallen out of favor. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk wondered if this was a sign to leave the company, only to realize that his assumptions were wrong. Once he recognized young master Hyun Sangyoon's true value, all his doubts instantly vanished. The narrator highlighted Hyun Sangyoon's admission certificate to Hankook University College of Law as proof of his abilities, confirming he was more serious about succession than anyone else. Hyun Sangyoon stood silhouetted against a brilliant cityscape, symbolizing his future as the one who would inherit the chairman's office of Sunghyun. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk gazed reflectively at a framed photograph of himself and Hyun Sangyoon. Holding the framed photo of himself and Hyun Sangyoon, assistant manager Lee Byum-suk pledged his entire being to the young master's succession. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk initiated a phone call, asking if he was speaking with President Lim Do-won of Sunghyun Electronics. He then introduced himself as assistant manager Lee Byum-suk from the Sunghyun Group Secretariat. President Lim Do-won expressed surprise at the caller's affiliation with the headquarters secretariat, as assistant manager Lee Byum-suk asked if he had time to meet and talk today. President Lim Do-won reacted with clear surprise to the request for an immediate meeting, questioning, today? The domestic home appliance market was firmly divided between two giants, Yonggang and Gyusan, with Sunghyun Electronics struggling as a distant third. Last year, Sunghyun's flagship black-and-white television saw noticeably poor sales, while their fast-growing rival, Ho Electronics, showed alarming growth. Soon, Ho Electronics had even surpassed Sunghyun in product placement at electronics stores, a development the company viewed as a total humiliation. President Lim Do-won, deeply distressed, knew that if the chairman discovered their failures, it would signify the end for him. For President Lim, the upcoming Wednesday, marked by the chairman's monthly meeting, felt like his own funeral, a sentiment he vocalized with a frustrated, ugh. as his phone began to ring. With a soft thud, a hand reached out, then clicked the rotary phone receiver into place. A surprised President Lim Do-won heard Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk introduce himself from the Sunghyun Group Secretariat. President Lim, still confused, questioned the headquarters secretariat's involvement, then listened as Assistant Manager Lee requested a convenient time for a visit regarding a few requests. With a confident and friendly demeanor, Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk introduced himself in person to President Lim Do-won, reminding him of their earlier call. President Lim invited Assistant Manager Lee to sit, who politely accepted, while Lim internally pondered the true purpose of the visit. With a soft thud, a hand placed a green book titled Basic Semiconductor Theory onto the wooden desk. Assistant Manager Lee indicated the book was on basic semiconductor theory, to which President Lim dryly responded, "So it seems." Assistant Manager Lee then slid the book across the desk toward President Lim, stating he had a favor to ask regarding it. With a broad smile, Assistant Manager Lee explained that young Master Sangyoon, the executive vice chairman's youngest son, needed assistance studying the semiconductor theory within the book. Assistant Manager Lee requested that President Lim find employees capable of explaining semiconductor theory, leaving Lim wide-eyed and internally wondering about the true meaning of the request. A dawning realization, accompanied by a bead of sweat, indicated President Lim's thought that this was an indirect command to align with the vice chairman. The narrator revealed that the atmosphere around the vice chairman had been unusual since last year, with Chairman Hyun in his 70s, sparking a fierce succession battle among his 4 sons, including Executive Vice Chairman Hyun Deok-jae. Consequently, subsidiary presidents appeared outwardly reserved, yet secretly engaged in fierce competition to strategically position themselves behind their chosen leader. President Lim cunningly realized that while he would have declined an open request to side with the vice chairman, going through the young master provided a subtly advantageous approach. Lim mused that if Hyun Deok-jae lost the succession battle, he could simply claim he was only helping the young master. However, if Hyun Deok-jae ascended to chairman, President Lim understood this opportunity could become his lifeline, significantly advancing his own career. With intense determination, President Lim resolved to immediately seize this critical lifeline. President Lim, now genuinely smiling, expressed his delight at the young master's interest in semiconductors and pledged to find the most suitable people to assist him. The shrill ring of an alarm clock at 4:30 a.m. roused Hyun Sangyoon from his sleep. Dressed in athletic wear, Hyun Sangyoon then began his brisk 30 minutes of morning exercise outdoors. Immediately after his workout, he thoroughly read the morning newspaper, sipping coffee in a cozy armchair. This rigorous routine, including the meticulous newspaper reading, was one he had maintained every single day since elementary school. As he reflected, Hyun Sangyoon silently questioned his own enduring dedication to such extensive efforts. His gaze shifted, and a knowing, well, hinted at the deeper, corporate world reasons behind his disciplined life. Hyun Sangyoon's internal monologue revealed his true ambition, to appear the perfect model citizen until he could acquire a building in Gangnam and become a wealthy, unemployed owner, free from responsibility, as he set down his coffee mug with a thump. A knock at the door preceded the servant's announcement that Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk had arrived, to which Hyun Sangyoon calmly responded, "Tell him to come in." The door burst open as Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk burst in with an overly enthusiastic, young master. "Good morning," while a sleepy Hyun Sangyoon could only manage a quiet groan in response. Assistant Manager Lee eagerly urged them to leave to avoid being late, while Hyun Sangyoon, though agreeing, privately wondered at his assistant's boundless energy. The scene shifted to the imposing exterior of Sunghyun Electronics Gangnam HQ2. President Lim Do-won greeted Hyun Sangyoon with an exaggeratedly deep bow and a booming, "Welcome young master," visibly surprising the young man. President Lim proudly declared he had assembled employees to assist Hyun Sangyoon with his semiconductor studies, despite Sangyoon's somewhat uncomfortable protest that he didn't have to. Laughing, President Lim said he would only stay a moment and instructed manager So Byung-hwa to introduce himself. Manager So Byung-hwa, bowing deeply, formally introduced himself as the senior member of the Semiconductor Study Group from Management Department 1, expressing his honor to meet young Master Hyun Sangyoon. Following suit, Manager Go Hak-jun from Management Department 3, Assistant Manager Cho Mi-yeon from General Affairs, and Staff Kim In-rak from Sales Department 1 each introduced themselves. Hyun Sangyoon politely greeted everyone in return, introducing himself by name to the clapping employees and President Lim. Hyun Sangyoon then made a sincere request, asking them to treat him merely as a student eager to learn, rather than as the chairman's grandson or the vice chairman's son. When President Lim began to address him as young master, Hyun Sangyoon interrupted, explaining that the title made him uncomfortable. With a polite bow and a hand to his chest, Hyun Sangyoon requested that they simply call him Sangyoon. President Lim enthusiastically clapped and agreed to the change, while Assistant Manager Lee internally praised young Master Sangyoon's eagerness to learn. Manager So Byung-hwa awkwardly corrected himself from young master to Sangyoon, then announced that their first lesson would begin with a test to assess his current knowledge. To alleviate any awkwardness, Manager So explained that the other employees would be taking the test alongside him. Manager So then clarified the test parameters, 10 questions to be completed within a 30-minute time limit. With Manager So's command to begin, the room filled with the rustle of papers and the tap of a pen as Hyun Sangyoon prepared to start. Hyun Sangyoon's eyes widened in shock as he read the first few questions, which included proving non-abelian quasi-particles and deriving design principles for superconducting devices. Despite his initial shock, Hyun Sangyoon internally mused, "Why is this so easy?" Panicked, Hyun Sangyoon realized his extensive self-study had made the impossibly difficult questions too easy, prompting him to wonder how he could intentionally achieve a mediocre score. His mind instantly resolved to aim for nothing less than an average score. He devised a plan to intentionally answer some questions incorrectly, just as he had during the academic ability test, determined to score as average as possible. As the clock ticked past the 30-minute mark, Manager So Byung-hwa declared, "Time's up," announcing he would now reveal the results. Manager So began to announce the scores, starting, he said, with the lowest. Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk sheepishly admitted he hadn't understood a single thing, prompting Manager So to acknowledge that it wasn't his major. Manager So continued, announcing that Manager Go Hak-jun had achieved 90 points, while Assistant Manager Cho Mi-yeon and Staff Kim In-rak both scored 80. Building suspense, Manager So Byung-hwa then declared, and finally. He dramatically announced that Sangyoon had achieved a score of 70 points. President Lim showered Sangyoon with praise, declaring he had done well for his first attempt, to which Sangyoon politely replied, "Thank you." As President Lim continued to gush with exaggerated, "Great job. Great, great, great," praises, Hyun Sangyoon secretly observed his awkward, forced expression. A cunning smirk spread across Hyun Sangyoon's face as he internally confirmed this was the exact reaction he desired, having deliberately aimed for an average score of 70. Hyun Sangyoon chuckled inwardly, celebrating his calculated underperformance, while Manager So looked on in confusion. Manager So then addressed Sangyoon with a worried tone, who responded, "Yes. What is it?" With wide, stunned eyes, Manager So explained that question number 10, asking to prove that all non-trivial zeros of the Riemann zeta function lie on a specific line, had a failure rate of over 90% even among college seniors. Manager So then demanded how Sangyoon had possibly solved such an impossibly difficult question, leaving the young man in a state of visible shock. The man in the dark suit inquisitively demanded how Hyun Sangyoon had managed to solve the notoriously difficult last question, number 10. Hyun Sangyoon, looking genuinely bewildered, questioned if the problem was even supposed to be hard, as he had found it quite easy. The man in the dark suit stammered in disbelief, reiterating that even the club staff had failed to answer question 10 correctly. He then asked if Hyun Sangyoon had been studying consistently, to which the young man coyly replied that it had only been about a week. The man in the dark suit stared, wide-eyed and mouth agape, utterly amazed and calling Hyun Sangyoon's rapid learning unbelievable. A smug smile played on Hyun Sangyoon's face as he inwardly mused about everyone's overblown reaction to his intelligence. His smugness quickly turned to panic, however, as Hyun Sangyoon worried about what his grandfather's reaction would be if he were rumored to be a genius. His imagined grandfather gleefully clapped, proclaiming Hyun Sangyoon incredible, while a tiny, annoyed chibi version of Sangyoon appeared, lamenting the persistent fantasy. President Lim Do-won then interjected, stating he had one question, to which Hyun Sangyoon politely gave his permission to proceed. President Lim Do-won questioned Hyun Sangyoon directly, asking why he focused on semiconductors when many other fields were just as profitable. With a confident smile, Hyun Sangyoon began to explain his reasoning, highlighting how semiconductors were light, thin, short, and small. He further elaborated that this meant compact, lightweight, and precise technology, envisioning a sparkling semiconductor chip in his hand. The narrator explained that Korea's industrial growth had long been rooted in heavy industry, a path faithfully followed by conglomerates like Sunghyun, Jongsan, and Daeon. Despite this history, Hyun Sangyoon passionately argued that semiconductor technology, particularly very large-scale integration, was the only way for Korean industry to catch up with global leaders like the US and Japan. President Lim Do-won summarized Hyun Sangyoon's argument, asking if he truly believed the future lay in semiconductors, to which Sangyoon confidently affirmed, yes, exactly. President Lim Do-won remained silent, a pensive expression settling on his face as he absorbed the ambitious statements. He acknowledged Hyun Sangyoon's inspiring words but tempered them with realism, pointing out the immense difficulty and the 20-year technology gap separating them from developed nations. Hyun Sangyoon thoughtfully conceded in his mind that President Lim's concerns were valid. A cunning glint in his eye, Hyun Sangyoon admitted his true cynical thoughts, revealing his grand statements were merely an excuse and that closing such a gap was realistically impossible. President Lim Do-won then expressed his understanding of Hyun Sangyoon's intentions and his care for Sunghyun Electronics, prompting Sangyoon to thank him and add another request. Hyun Sangyoon leaned in playfully, winking as he specifically asked President Lim to keep the day's events a secret from the chairman. President Lim Do-won winked back, reassuring Hyun Sangyoon that he was famous for his discretion and would take the secret to his grave. However, the narrator commented on President Lim's promise, as Chief Ju Yong-hoon observed the young master explicitly asking for secrecy, muttering, "I see." A phone rang as manager Go Hak-jun dismissed Chief Ju Yong-hoon, who bowed profusely before departing, wishing the chairman a wonderful day. Chief Ju Yong-hoon quietly closed the door with a soft click, leaving the office behind. The older man, beaming, then erupted into a hearty "wahahaha" of satisfaction. He praised Sangyoon for studying beyond academics for the company's sake, asking Chief Ju if their Sangyoon wasn't incredible, to which the chief dutifully agreed, "Indeed, sir." The older man mused over Sangyoon's peculiar test results, noting he aced the hard questions while missing easy ones, and asked Chief Ju for his interpretation, who suggested it could be a coincidence. The older man, however, dismissed the notion, stating that he might consider coincidence for anyone else. He took a confident step, his words emphasizing his unwavering conviction that it wasn't the case for Sangyoon. He declared that Sangyoon was not one to rely on luck, proclaiming it as real talent that could fool others but never him. The older man's smile widened mischievously as he smoothly transitioned to the topic of the upcoming monthly meeting. He then playfully suggested having that rascal Sangyoon say a few words, causing Chief Ju Yong-hoon to visibly flinch in surprise. A shocked Chief Ju Yong-hoon questioned his seriousness, but the older man simply smiled, asking if he wasn't already looking forward to it. The older man's excitement radiated as he declared he couldn't wait to see what Sangyoon would say to shake things up. A blaring alarm clock pierced the morning silence, quickly silenced by a hand reaching out to tap it off. Hyun Sangyoon stretched and yawned, mentally noting that today's schedule promised to be even tighter than usual. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk greeted the young master with an enthusiastic, "Good morning." Even with the chairman's monthly meeting looming, Hyun Sangyoon's morning still required him to study in Gangnam before heading to Gwanek for class. Unseen, Hyun Sangyoon had already requested assistant manager Lee to quickly modify his morning schedule. Arriving at the Suncheon Youth Warehouse, a young man questioned the unusual meeting place, echoed by assistant manager Lee Byum-suk, before Hyun Sangyoon suggested they simply head inside. Hyun Sangyoon pushed open a modern glass door, which let out a soft creak as he entered. Both Hyun Sangyoon and assistant manager Lee Byum-suk gasped, their eyes widening in utter shock at the sight before them. Hyun Sangyoon marveled that what he thought was an old warehouse turned out to be incredibly fancy inside, a sentiment assistant manager Lee Byum-suk wholeheartedly shared. A man with dark hair ushered Hyun Sangyoon further inside, while a chibi assistant manager Lee Byum-suk declared he would wait outside. Hyun Sangyoon confirmed the identity of Won Dong-sik, a staff reporter for Dongsun Daily, who then jovially invited him to take a seat. As Won Dong-sik began to address him formally, Hyun Sangyoon charmingly interrupted, suggesting he could be called Sangyoon or whatever the reporter preferred. Won Dong-sik pressed Hyun Sangyoon about his sudden acceptance of the interview, dismissing Sangyoon's feigned answer about his juniors, stating, "I know how things work." Won Dong-sik then insightfully explained that a chaebol family typically meets with a reporter for one of two distinct reasons. He visually demonstrated these reasons, either to build themselves up or to discreetly bury some unfavorable information. Won Dong-sik urged honesty, declaring himself a professional, but Hyun Sangyoon maintained his feigned innocence, insisting he was merely a 20-year-old college student there to discuss his studies. Won Dong-sik countered with a knowing smile, reminding Sangyoon that he was also a chaebol young master. He pragmatically explained that the public didn't just want a study story, but one about a smart, rich young master, adding that he wrote what people wanted to read. As Hyun Sangyoon sipped his coffee, he inwardly conceded that the reporter was not wrong about his professional motives. Hyun Sangyoon's intense gaze reflected his self-awareness, acknowledging that his chaebol status was the sole reason for his presence and the interview. Won Dong-sik inquired about Sangyoon being a law student, which he confirmed, while the narrator revealed Sangyoon actually had a specific reason for meeting a reporter. Won Dong-sik commented on the interesting textbook, noting it was clearly not a legal code, to which Hyun Sangyoon identified it as basic semiconductor theory. Won Dong-sik exclaimed, "A semiconductor," in surprise, exactly as Hyun Sangyoon had calculated, wanting to subtly reveal what he was studying. The narrator explained the impending ripple effect. Once published, the news would signal Sungyeon's entry into the semiconductor business, a sector already targeted by Jongsan and Gyeosan as a new growth engine. The image of an older man furiously reading a newspaper underscored the thought that leaking such corporate information would certainly damage one's evaluation. Hyun Sangyoon mused that while his plan seemed risky, it actually wasn't, even if he were accused of leaking corporate secrets. His imagined self smirked, rehearsing a denial, "I've never seen any secrets, and I have no influence over Sunghyun Group's grand strategy, a simple strategy of playing dumb." He reasoned that no one would expect him, merely a college student and not an executive, to play such a strategic role anyway. Won Dong-sik asked if he could take the semiconductor discussion as an official statement, and Hyun Sangyoon carelessly replied, "Sure, write whatever you want." Won Dong-sik warned Hyun Sangyoon he might regret his casual permission, pointedly reminding him, "I am a reporter." Won Dong-sik predicted the headline impact of the Sunghyun family's young master studying semiconductors, to which Hyun Sangyoon calmly responded, "I know," as a cup tapped onto a saucer. Hyun Sangyoon then revealed his true strategic intention, stating that he wouldn't have met with Won Dong-sik at all if he weren't a reporter. Won Dong-sik's eyes widened in surprise, leaving him momentarily speechless by the young master's bluntness. He candidly admitted that Hyun Sangyoon was far more interesting than he had initially expected. Won Dong-sik shrugged playfully, acknowledging he was gotten and confirming that Hyun Sangyoon's intentions extended far beyond a simple interview about university acceptance. Concluding they both desired something from each other, Won Dong-sik leaned forward, asking Hyun Sangyoon to lay out his plan. Hyun Sangyoon's simple plan was clear: one would provide the scoop, and the other would write the desired article. He confidently summarized it as a give and take, then asked Won Dong-sik for his thoughts on the arrangement. Won Dong-sik thoughtfully hummed, considering the proposition with his eyes closed. With a decisive deal. Let's do it. One Dong-shik shook Hyun Sangyoon's hand, who then commended his wise choice. One Dong-shik emphasized the immense help a reporter like him would be, while Hyun Sangyoon acknowledged their new alliance by stating his full title. An aerial view showcased the towering Sunghyun building dominating the bustling modern city below. Below, numerous young men in sharp suits congregated outside the corporate building, flanked by luxury cars, signaling an important event. A young man opened the doors to the conference room, where the long-awaited monthly meeting, presided over by the chairman, was about to begin. Hyun Sangyoon stood at the threshold, his gaze intense as he considered the major impact his every word would have on his future. The narration presented two paths before him, either being unwillingly drawn into the company's executive ranks, a thought shared by the serious faces of assistant manager Cho Mi-yeon and manager So Byung-hwa. Or, Hyun Sangyoon mused, he could quietly inherit a few buildings in Gangnam and live a comfortable, stress-free life forever. The narration concluded that Chairman Hyun Byung-jeon's evaluation, as he watched Hyun Sangyoon's every move, would ultimately decide the outcome of this pivotal meeting and his future. A standard disclaimer appeared, stating that the work, its characters, locations, organizations, and events were entirely fictional. Hyun Sangyoon greeted the attendees with a deep bow, introducing himself as present for the monthly meeting. He expressed his anticipation for working with them, as murmurs rippled through the seated executives, including assistant manager Cho Mi-yeon, manager Go Hak-jun, President Lim Do-won, Hyun Hee-jae, and President Go Mu-yeol. Assistant manager Cho Mi-yeon inwardly questioned Hyun Sangyoon's unexpected presence at the monthly meeting, while manager Go Hak-jun remained silent, both staring intently. President Go Mu-yeol enthusiastically greeted Hyun Sangyoon, addressing him as young master and asking if he remembered him. Hyun Sangyoon smoothly confirmed his memory, identifying him as President Go Mu-yeol of Sunghyun Construction. President Go Mu-yeol bowed deeply in gratitude, expressing his thanks. President Go Mu-yeol explained the Sangam Library at Hankook University College of Law was nearing completion, assuring Hyun Sangyoon they worked tirelessly so as not to disrupt your studies, young master. President Go Mu-yeol smiled broadly, feeling deeply pleased by the young master's unexpected presence at the meeting. Suddenly, President Go Mu-yeol announced the chairman's entry, instructing everyone to stand as a door clicked open in the distance. With a unified rustle, all the executives, including Hyun Sangyoon, rose to their feet as the chairman made his full entrance. The chairman, holding papers and radiating an imposing presence, asked about everyone's well-being, to which the unnamed executives immediately replied, "Yes, we've been well, Chairman." The chairman walked with a rustle of his suit past the rows of bowing executives, their heads lowered in reverence. The atmosphere crackled with intensity as Hyun Sangyoon observed, a subtle smirk playing on his lips as he thought, "I should never become a chairman." A chapter title card appeared on screen, marking a new segment of the story. With a soft rustle of pages, the chairman settled at the head of the table, reviewing documents as the meeting officially commenced. Several executives, including Hyun Sangyoon, manager Go Hak-jun, and President Lim Do-won, appeared tense and worried. The chairman abruptly called out, "Go Muiol," startling President Go Mu-yeol, whose eyes widened in surprise. President Go Mu-yeol immediately jumped to his feet, snapping to attention and responding, "Yes, Sir." The chairman sternly noted President Go Mu-yeol's improved contracting performance, despite a poor showing last year, and demanded an explanation. President Go Mu-yeol confidently explained that while apartment contracting remained stagnant, his company had found a breakthrough in a different area. The chairman listened intently, his serious face demanding further details about this breakthrough. President Go Mu-yeol triumphantly credited winning the Sangam Library contract at Hankook University, which led to increased university construction requests, and also noted that shortening the construction period, as you ordered, was a major advantage. The chairman's eyes narrowed, his expression scrutinizing as he asked, "So, you strayed from the path?" President Go Mu-yeol confidently declared that, as long as we reach Seoul, the path doesn't matter, much to the observation of Hyun Sangyoon and assistant manager Cho Mi-yeon. A stylized diagram showed President Go Mu-yeol's progress, with the chairman acknowledging the achievement of 30% of the target but asserting, "You might not have reached Seoul, but you made it to Gyeonggi-do." The chairman, with unwavering resolve, commanded him to work harder. "Get to Seoul," demanding, "understood?" President Go Muyol, with firm determination, loudly declared, "I will keep that in mind," while assistant manager Cho Mi-yun watched with concern. The chairman then abruptly called out, "Get," making manager Go Hak-jun startle before nervously responding, "Yes, chairman." The chairman questioned manager Go Hak-jun about the Middle East project, prompting a hesitant, "Well, about that." From the manager. Manager Go Hak-jun, looking downcast, offered a stifled apology to the chairman, as assistant manager Cho Mi-yun watched with worry. Manager Go Hak-jun nervously attempted to reassure the chairman, explaining they were in the final stages of negotiation and promising results within a month. The chairman fixed him with an intense, glaring look, stating, "Confidence is useless. I need results." With a thud, the chairman addressed the entire room, declaring, "Listen closely, everyone. I don't believe in confidence. If I can't see it, it doesn't exist." Hyun Sangyoon observed reflectively as the chairman, from off-panel, ordered them to bring visible results next time. The chairman's voice then turned to the chemical sector, asking its manager if he had results, causing the young man to flinch nervously. The manager of the chemical sector, looking dejected, apologized and attempted to promise results by the next meeting. The chairman then roared, his voice filled with fury, addressing the department store. Hyun Hee-jae nervously tried to justify the department store's performance to the chairman, citing government crackdowns and stagnant sales. The chairman erupted in a terrifying roar, his eyes glowing white as he screamed, "Call me chairman, not father." Hyun Hee-jae choked back a gasp, her eyes wide with terror from the chairman's outburst. Hyun Hee-jae, trembling, attempted to continue her explanation about Sunghyun department store, but the chairman's off-panel voice cut her off with an exasperated, "What is wrong with everyone's mindset?" The chairman then turned his attention, his voice sharp, to Sunghyun Electronics. President Lim Do-won, gasping slightly, promptly jumped to his feet, acknowledging the chairman. The chairman's narrowed eyes delivered a chilling warning to President Lim Do-won, saying, "Surely you won't disappoint me too." President Lim Do-won's face showed extreme tension, beads of sweat forming on his brow. The narration noted that Hyun Sangyoon, the vice chairman's youngest son and a law school graduate, had unexpectedly joined the electronics division to study semiconductors. His presence, bowing alongside President Go Muyol under the chairman's watchful eye at today's meeting, seemed highly significant. An ominous rumbling underscored the narrative that Hyun Sangyoon's calculated actions and presence could not be mere coincidence. The narrator dramatically announced that a massive game for succession was now in motion, urging all to choose an alignment. President Lim Do-won, while inwardly strategizing to uncover the chairman's true intentions for summoning Hyun Sangyoon, stated that he had something urgent to discuss with you, Chairman, before beginning his report. The chairman, listening sternly, simply gave his permission to go ahead. President Lim Do-won then revealed, "Your grandson, Hyun Sangyoon, is also here today," causing Hyun Sangyoon to flinch in surprise. President Lim Do-won continued, detailing Hyun Sangyoon's recent involvement with the electronics division, which left Hyun Sangyoon utterly shocked, exclaiming, "What?" The chairman remained calm and unimpressed by the revelation, simply stating, "I see. But what of it?" President Lim Do-won confidently proposed, "With all due respect, I would like you to hear my Sangyoon's thoughts first, before my report," suggesting Hyun Sangyoon had something to say about Sunghyun Electronics. From an overhead view of the meeting room, the chairman assented with a simple, "Very well." The chairman called out Hyun Sangyoon's name, and Hyun Sangyoon immediately responded with a respectful bow, "Yes, Chairman." Assistant Manager Cho Mi-yun and Manager Go Hak-jun watched as the chairman, from off-panel, invited Hyun Sangyoon to speak, stating he would keep his questions brief. The chairman, with a curious smile, questioned Hyun Sangyoon directly, "What is it? What did you find by going all the way to Sunghyun Electronics?" Hyun Sangyoon began by acknowledging the chairman's goal to revitalize Sunghyun Electronics with a new business sector, prompting a terse "and" from the chairman. Hyun Sangyoon, with a dramatic impact, boldly proposed, "How about semiconductors as our new business," accompanied by a glowing chip visual. Several executives, including President Lim Do-won, manager Go Hak-jun, and assistant manager Cho Mi-yeon, reacted with wide-eyed shock and disbelief, murmuring, "Semiconductors." Hyun Sangyoon suppressed a chuckle, a sly and pleased smirk on his face as he thought, "Great, they're all caught off guard. Just the reaction I wanted." He subtly glanced at President Lim Do-won's flustered face, anticipating further developments. President Lim Do-won, rendered in grayscale, looked utterly confused and shocked by the turn of events. He wondered in disbelief, why is he looking so pleased, as shock stars radiated around him. Hyun Sangyoon boldly proposed semiconductors as the company's new business venture to the assembled executives and chairman. Inwardly, Hyun Sangyoon anticipated President Lim's shocked reaction with a smug smirk. To his surprise, the chairman reacted with an unexpectedly pleased and beaming smile, making Hyun Sangyoon wonder why he looked so delighted. The chairman continued to laugh heartily, his jovial mood spreading through the boardroom as other executives observed. The chairman then called out to Chief Ju Yong-hoon, who promptly responded to his inquiry. The chairman directly asked Chief Ju if he had heard Hyun Sangyoon's proposal, and Chief Ju confirmed that he had. Chief Ju Yong-hoon, appearing aghast, expressed his disbelief and nervous amusement at Hyun Sangyoon's bold semiconductor proposal. The chairman then addressed Hyun Sangyoon directly, who respectfully affirmed his presence. The chairman then praised Hyun Sangyoon's words, declaring his gratitude, which left Hyun Sangyoon utterly shocked and bewildered. The chairman continued, noting that Hyun Sangyoon had finally voiced an important truth that other executives, including his own family members, had been unable to articulate. With a resolute expression, the chairman agreed with Hyun Sangyoon's assessment, acknowledging the company's decline and the urgent need for change, emphasizing that, "We cannot go on like this." He then revealed his own conviction, stating that he also believed entering semiconductors was their only viable path to rebuild Sunghyun Electronics. As the chairman complimented Hyun Sangyoon's foresight, Hyun Sangyoon was left utterly confused, questioning if his grandfather had been planning this all along. Hyun Sangyoon remained standing, observing President Go Mu-yeol, who subtly smirked from his seat at the table. President Go Mu-yeol gave a smug nod, a gesture that clearly irritated Hyun Sangyoon. Suddenly, an unnamed executive, a man in a dark suit, interrupted the meeting, seeking permission to speak from the chairman. The executive vehemently argued against the semiconductor venture, passionately detailing the astronomical costs and advanced technological requirements that made it prohibitive. He further stressed the critical nature of the decision, warning that it was a grave matter for the entire group, not just Sunghyun Electronics. The chairman, visibly furious with eyes glowing white, challenged the executive to continue, causing him to stammer in fear. The chairman slammed his fist onto the table, powerfully asserting that every challenge came with risks, and failure to take them would only lead to a slow demise. The unnamed executive shouted back in desperation, insisting that such an impossible challenge would only ruin the group's future. The chairman yelled back, fiercely challenging the executive's claim of impossibility, demanding to know how he could judge it without even trying. President Go Mu-yeol, alarmed, shouted, "Father," in distress, attempting to intervene in the heated exchange. The chairman then revealed Hyun Sangyoon's secret studies, stating that his nephew had gained knowledge rivaling any major in the semiconductor field, which completely shocked Hyun Sangyoon. He then scolded the unnamed executive, questioning why he focused on dying instead of surviving when facing a critical situation. The chairman harshly shamed the executive, comparing his preemptive surrender to Hyun Sangyoon's youthful initiative and asking if he felt no shame. The chairman then challenged President Go Mu-yeol to speak further, to which President Go Mu-yeol responded with a humbled, "No, father." When the chairman challenged the remaining executives, they all remained silent, looking down or away in defeat. The chairman then issued a powerful and defiant challenge, daring anyone to oppose Sunghyun's ambition to surpass its rivals and become the nation's top electronics company. After the chairman's intimidating statement, all the executives remained completely silent and subdued. The chairman calmly announced the conclusion of the meeting, stating, "Good work, everyone." All the executives rose and respectfully thanked the chairman as the meeting formally ended. As others dispersed, the chairman singled out Hyun Sangyoon, who promptly responded to his address. The chairman then smiled warmly, inviting Hyun Sangyoon to dinner to discuss important matters. Hyun Sangyoon agreed to the dinner invitation, while President Go Muyol looked on with evident anger and envy. Later, the chairman's command to choose was presented over a view of a prominent building under a moonlit night sky, signaling a new development. At dinner, Hyun Sangyoon, confused, asked the chairman for clarification on what he needed to choose. The chairman, with a knowing and challenging look, directly told Hyun Sangyoon to choose between the US or Japan. Hyun Sangyoon expressed his sudden confusion, admitting he did not understand the chairman's abrupt demand. Internally, Hyun Sangyoon deduced that the chairman wanted him to choose a country for semiconductor technology transfer. Narration explained that Japan and the United States were the only nations with mass production facilities for ultra-high-density integrated circuits, highlighting their strategic importance. Hyun Sangyoon protested his involvement, claiming he was not an executive, but the chairman dismissed his feigned ignorance with a slight smirk. The chairman assertively declared that he already heard everything, startling Hyun Sangyoon, who fearfully inquired what he meant. The chairman then revealed that Chief Ju Yong-hoon had informed him before the meeting about Hyun Sangyoon's encounter with a reporter, implying his actions were known and anticipated. Hyun Sangyoon, frustrated, realized that the entire situation had been a deliberate setup. Hyun Sangyoon's internal monologue shifted from believing his grandfather trusted him enough to support his proposal, to a shocked realization that his idealized perception was wrong. He mentally replayed his bold proposal, questioning whether his grandfather should have instead give true education to a grandson who says things he can't back up. The chairman maintained a calm, knowing expression, which only intensified Hyun Sangyoon's pressure and nervousness. The chairman asked if he had given it enough thought, prompting Hyun Sangyoon to internally panic over his grandfather's expectant gaze. The chairman firmly insisted that Hyun Sangyoon must choose, stating there were no other options, his eyes shining with determination. The scene shifted to the exterior of a modern house at night, indicating a change in setting. Inside, Hyun Deok-jae sat peacefully on a white sofa, engrossed in a book. Hyun Deok-jae sighed, pondering his son's dinner with his grandfather. He mused about his son's first meeting, recalling the public's critical reception and the ensuing discussions. Hyun Deok-jae reflected that his duty to guard the group's control tower, as per the chairman's belief, was the reason he couldn't be with his son. He then expressed a deep, emotional regret, wishing he could have abandoned his post that day because that's how a father feels. Hyun Deok-jae continued his reflection, remembering the news of his son proposing semiconductors and the echoing words of Chief of the Secretariat Cho Hyung-man. His thoughts were interrupted by Hyun Sangyoon's voice announcing his return home. Hyun Deok-jae greeted Hyun Sangyoon, inquired about his dinner with his grandfather, and invited him to sit. Hyun Deok-jae then brought up the meeting, asking if Hyun Sangyoon had indeed proposed semiconductors, which his son confirmed. He questioned Hyun Sangyoon about using the media to pressure the chairman, to which Hyun Sangyoon admitted it was an unintended outcome. Hyun Sangyoon then revealed that the chairman wanted him to take a leave of absence after the school year, surprising Hyun Deok-jae. He further explained the chairman's plan to send him abroad for training at a semiconductor company in either the US or Japan. Hyun Deok-jae asked if Hyun Sangyoon had made his decision, and Hyun Sangyoon confidently affirmed that he had. With a confident smile and sparkling eyes, Hyun Sangyoon declared his decision to go to the US for training. Hyun Sangyoon reiterated his choice to go to the US, and Hyun Deok-jae sighed in relief. Hyun Sangyoon then asked if his father had eaten dinner, prompting a quick, slightly evasive reply from Hyun Deok-jae. Flustered, Hyun Deok-jae abruptly shouted at Hyun Sangyoon to go upstairs, startling him. Hyun Sangyoon politely said goodnight to his father and headed upstairs, watched by Hyun Deok-jae. As he walked away, Hyun Sangyoon realized his father might have waited for him without eating. Hyun Deok-jae then smiled softly and affectionately, likely thinking of his son with pride. A loud whack accompanied Hyun Deoon's shocked exclamation of, "What?" as he reacted to unexpected news from Singapore over the phone. Hyun Deoon, the eldest son of Hyun Taek-jae, currently studying abroad at St. Jefferson State University, grumbled from his bed about someone showing off in front of the chairman. In a dim office, the man in dark suit mused that he made such a fuss during the New Year's greetings, too, questioning if he has not learned his lesson, to which President Lim Do-won replied, "Seems like it," and then asked, "What should we do?" The man in dark suit challenged Hyun Deoon, asking, "What do you mean? He's your younger brother. He's below you," as the narrative introduced Hyun Tae-yoon, the eldest son of Hyun Sung-jae, attending New York University. Hyun Deoon scoffed defensively with a "ha," then retorted, "So what? What do you want me to do about it?" prompting the man in dark suit to admonish him, "You shouldn't say that, Hyung." The man in dark suit firmly stated that, if anyone's going to teach him a lesson or discipline him, it has to be you, adding that he himself was just from the second son's side, so I don't have much standing. The man in dark suit pressed on, asserting, "But you are the eldest grandson of Sung Hyun," which made Hyun Deoon the head of our generation, but an angry Hyun Deoon countered, "You don't even treat me like your older brother normally." Hyun Deoon abruptly ended the call, stating, "Fine, I get it. Hang up," before casually mentioning he was planning to party hard tonight and needed to get some rest to save up my energy. A dismissive "psh" escaped the man in dark suit's lips as he mockingly asked Hyun Deoon, "Are you still living like that? Show some restraint," then sneered, "Hearing that from you of all people is hilarious," before bringing up Hyun Deoon's past troubles, as if you're one to talk, after causing trouble with a girl in Korea and fleeing to Singapore. With a sharp click, Hyun Deoon furiously stated, "I'm hanging up," then raged, "That piece of shit," throwing the phone which impacted the floor with a wham, crash, and shatter. A soft drip of rain outside accompanied Hyun Deoon's pensive gaze from the window after his outburst. Hyun Deoon's internal monologue revealed his deep dissatisfaction, thinking, "I'm so sick of this backwater place," and a profound regret, "If I knew it'd be like this, I should have gone to America too." A weary sigh escaped Hyun Deoon as he lay dejectedly in bed, the drip of rain a mournful backdrop to his thoughts. Then again, no university there would accept me anyway. Elsewhere, the man in dark suit reiterated his earlier grievance, insisting, "I'm telling you. That punk is really showing off in front of the chairman." A frustrated pound and thud punctuated Hyun Deoon's internal concession, "But seriously, it's true that Sangyoon has been acting up lately." Hyun Deoon's resentment grew as he recalled that Hyun Sangyoon was so ordinary back in high school, only to, out of nowhere, get into Hankook University College of Law, hogs all of grandfather's praise, and even have the nerve to ask grandfather to build a law library as an admission gift, which he actually received. The chairman's hearty he laughter seemed to mock Hyun Deoon's internal question, "Is that really the grandfather I know?" Meanwhile, Hyun Deoon bitterly recalled his own, more modest desires, thinking, "I only asked for a bungalow with a terrace. Or just one Chevrolet Stingray, not even two." He lamented that he had never gotten that kind of gift from him. He recalled a past New Year's visit to Korea where he brought it up to father and I got scolded, with a cutting rebuke, "Your younger cousin got into Hankook University College of Law. How do you have so many demands when you can barely study?" His father's scolding continued, "Instead of trying to do better than your cousin, you just complain." Causing Hyun Deoon to wonder with deep frustration, "I'm the eldest son, so why is everyone only looking out for him?" His internal monologue continued, questioning, "Father is an eldest son too, so why doesn't he understand how I feel?" as his younger self bowed his head in defeat, marked by a soft thump. With a sharp punch and thud, a fist clenched, an outward manifestation of Hyun Doo-yoon's boiling internal anger. Lying dejectedly in his bed, Hyun Doo-yoon internally cursed, "Damn it, what a crappy world." A thoughtful hum escaped Hyun Doo-yoon as he suspected, "That punk. He's definitely up to something." Hyun Doo-yoon's frustration finally gave way to resignation, thinking, "Whatever, I don't care anymore," as his broken phone lay shattered on the floor. The next morning, President Lim Do-won greeted Hyun Sangyoon with a cheerful, "Good morning, Sangyoon," and Hyun Sangyoon returned a polite bow and a thump as he responded, "Yes, good morning, President Lim." The narrator announced that their little club had finally received an official designation, the Task Force for the Establishment of Sungyeon Electronic Semiconductor Division, or simply the Semiconductor Task Force. Hyun Sangyoon observed that everyone became a regular member, and he himself was added to the roster as an apprentice, understanding that, until my training in the US, I have to play my part here. Inside a modern conference room, President Lim Do-won instructed the task force, "All right, everyone, please take a seat." A quiet "hat" escaped Hyun Sangyoon as he thought, "Some might call me a nepotism hire, but I don't care," confident that, "It's all part of my plan anyway." As President Lim Do-won posed the question, "So, how should we proceed?" Hyun Sangyoon cunningly considered, "The more work I take on, the higher the chance of making mistakes. And if I keep messing up, their expectations of me will drop," concluding, "So this situation is actually an opportunity." President Lim Do-won then detailed their initial strategy, explaining, "Following the chairman's instructions, I think we should start by looking into U.S. semiconductor companies or research labs that can transfer technology to U.S. Manager Go Hak-jun proposed, "How about Vicron?" but staff Kim In-rak quickly dismissed it, stating, "I heard they're already linked with Yungsan Electronics, and therefore, won't even give U.S. the time of day," prompting Assistant Manager Cho Mi-yeon to inquire, "What about IMB?" Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk reacted with incredulity, asking, "Are you talking about the IMB I know? The world's largest personal computer manufacturer," before letting out a frustrated sigh. And muttering, "This is suffocating." Assistant Manager Cho Mi-yeon confirmed, "Yes, that's the one." "Why? Is something wrong?" To which Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk explained, "Not long ago, a Japanese company got caught sending an industrial spy to IMB, which caused a huge scandal, making them extremely on edge right now." Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk concluded that they won't accept any Asian companies, even if it's unfair to US, which led Assistant Manager Cho Mi-yeon to defensively ask, "How was I supposed to know that?" A frustrated grr sounded in Hyun Sangyoon's mind as he lamented, "I should have been the one to say that," but staff Kim In-rak's voice cut through his thoughts, asking, "Mr. Sangyoon?" President Lim Do-won then graciously invited Hyun Sangyoon, "Why don't you share your thoughts too, Mr. Sangyoon?" Manager So Byung-hwa expressed keen interest, "Yes, I'm curious to hear your opinion, Mr. Sangyoon," and staff Kim In-rak chimed in, "I'm sure it'll be much better than Assistant Manager Cho's idea," leading Assistant Manager Cho Mi-yeon to snap, "Kim In-rak, are you going to keep this up?" All while Hyun Sangyoon secretly plotted, "I need to make a mistake here, even if it's a little one." Hyun Sangyoon's thoughts raced, intensely urging himself, Think, Hyun Sangyoon, as he considered, what company could possibly be worse than IMB? After determining, what's the most ridiculous, incorrect answer I can give, Hyun Sangyoon confidently began his presentation, asking, "Well, how about this?" Then added, "Vicron and IMB are both manufacturing companies, right?" clarifying, "I mean, they produce semiconductors rather than focusing on technology research." Manager So Byung-hwa confirmed, "I suppose you could say that," as Hyun Sangyoon continued, "and Yungsan and Gyusan both partnered with those kinds of manufacturers," a point Manager So Byung-hwa again affirmed with, "That's correct." With a subtle sparkle in his expression, Hyun Sangyoon slyly proposed, "What if we did the exact opposite?" Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk echoed, "The opposite?" As Hyun Sangyoon unveiled his audacious plan, "I was thinking, what if we approached the research lab that actually developed the MOSFET, which is the foundation of semiconductors, and got their approval?" Hyun Sangyoon further explained, of course we'd need TO transfer mass production technology, but source technology is far more important. With a confident humph, Hyun Sangyoon inquired, what do you think of my idea, secretly thinking to himself, obviously, it's completely absurd. Manager Go Hakjun identified the target. If you're talking about MOSFET, that means Kohl Labs under ATT, the top telecom company in the US, then questioned with a sigh, why on earth would Kohl Labs ever collaborate with US, as assistant manager Cho Mi-yeon added with a, ho-ho, I know you're ambitious, but you've gone a bit too far today. Looking slightly embarrassed, President Lim Do-won gently concluded, I'm afraid that's going to be a bit difficult. Hyun Sangyoon internally questioned, is that what they'll say, but was instead met with an excited, oh, then oh, from staff Kim In-rak, followed by manager Go Hakjun's triumphant declaration, as expected. Manager Go Hakjun beamed with pride, exclaiming, that's our Mr. Sangyoon, while a bewildered Hyun Sangyoon could only think, ah. Manager So Byung-hwa, overcome with excitement, declared, if we can actually pull that OFF, Youngsun and Gyusun won't stand a chance, and felt reassured knowing Sangyoon will be taking on that role, while a panicked Hyun Sangyoon could only think, wait a minute. That's. With a nervous stare. President Lim Do-won, beaming, wholeheartedly endorsed the plan, exclaiming, young MAS. Let's do exactly as Sangyoon says, before pulling the group, what does everyone think? A resounding hooray erupted from the team, with one young man enthusiastically shouting, hooray for Sangyoon. A panicked grumble escaped Hyun Sangyoon as the realization dawned on him, are they telling me to go do it myself? Manager So Byung-hwa continued to shower Hyun Sangyoon with praise, stating, as expected of the chairman's grandson, your vision is on a whole different level, and concluded, no wonder the chairman sent Sangyoon to RTF. In utter despair, Hyun Sangyoon internally pleaded, tell them no, then, tell them it was just a joke, even as President Lim Do-won graciously accepted with, thank you very much. With a soft thud, President Lim Do-won approached the now defeated Hyun Sangyoon, simply stating, Mr. Sangyoon. Staff Kim In-rak, oblivious to Hyun Sangyoon's internal panic, enthusiastically declared, it's going to go great. Manager So Byung-hwa, still impressed, commented, still, I'm amazed you thought of Kohl Labs, which led assistant manager Cho Mi-yeon to inquire, why is that? With a dramatic thump and thud, manager So Byung-hwa revealed, because the researcher who first invented Kohl Labs MOSFET technology is Korean, and then shared his name is Dr. Cho Young Dae. Manager So Byung-hwa enthusiastically proclaimed, Mr. Sangyoon suggesting Kohl Labs must be a grand plan to secure the source technology directly, which manager Go Hakjun challenged with, why are you jumping to conclusions, as a chibi Hyun Sangyoon screamed in silent distress. With a firm stare and a decisive chop of his hand, President Lim Do-won interjected, let me ask you something too. President Lim Do-won then posed a crucial question, wouldn't Youngsun and Gyusun have tried contacting them first, reminding the team, after all, they started their semiconductor businesses before US. Manager So Byung-hwa conceded, that's true, adding, there must be a reason they didn't, a point Hyun Sangyoon seized upon, exclaiming, President Lim, that's exactly it. With a confident grin, President Lim Do-won dismissed the concern, stating, but that's fine. President Lim Do-won confidently declared, I'm sure Mr. Sangyoon has already factored that into his plan, leaving a completely flabbergasted Hyun Sangyoon internally questioning, and wait. What? President Lim Do-won, beaming with enthusiasm, then encouraged, since young MAS. Mr. Sangyoon is offering to step up himself, asking, shouldn't we just trust him and follow his lead, and declared his full confidence, I believe in you, Mr. Sangyoon. Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk declared, I do too, followed by Assistant Manager Cho Mi-yeon's, me too, and staff Kim In-rak's enthusiastic, hooray for Sangyoon, all while a defeated Hyun Sangyoon lamented internally, how did it turn out like this again? Hyun Sangyoon slumped in his chair, despairing at the realization, now I'm not just going to the US, I actually have to do business. A sudden thought struck Hyun Sangyoon, making him pause and ask himself, "No, wait. Why didn't I think of that?" As if a plan were shattering into place, with sounds of crack, shatter, and shatter, Hyun Sangyoon's face took on a cunning expression as he realized, "I can just go there and fail to recruit Dr. Cho Young Dae. With deliberate tap and tap sounds, Hyun Sangyoon rose from his seat and confidently addressed the team, stating, "Since you all trust me so much." Hyun Sangyoon confidently declared, "I will make sure to get this done," while internally relishing the thought, the higher the expectations, the greater the disappointment. With emotional sniff and sob sounds, manager So Byung-hwa exclaimed, "As expected of young MAS. Sangyoon," adding, "I knew we could count on you." With a triumphant thump, Hyun Sangyoon publicly stated with a confident smile, "I look forward to my seniors' guidance and encouragement," while internally musing about turning a misfortune into a blessing and his plan to turn this crisis into an opportunity. The quiet suburban house stood under a full moon in New Jersey, USA, as night settled. Dr. Cho Young-dae firmly declared he could not accept terms if basic science research in semiconductors was not guaranteed, vowing he would not compromise. With a polite farewell, Dr. Cho Young-dae ended the call, the phone clicking into place. Dr. Cho Young-dae, team leader at A&T Coal Labs, lamented that every big corporation says the exact same thing, how disappointing. He had recently received offers from South Korea, including one from Yongsan promising the head of the semiconductor division, and another from Gyusan offering a president-level position and equity. On another call, Dr. Cho Young-dae directly questioned the commitment to budget and manpower for basic research. However, a man on the phone prioritized mass production over adjusting research budgets later, while another man holding papers stressed market securing over immediate research. Dr. Cho Young-dae reflected that none of the companies said what he wanted to hear, understanding that Korea was not yet in a position to invest in basic research as he departed from Kimpo International Airport. Later, Dr. Cho Young-dae expressed regret, wishing he could have contributed properly to basic research. He contemplated the vital role of basic research as a strong foundation for future progress, standing thoughtfully amidst traditional Korean architecture. Soon after, Dr. Cho Young-dae examined a formal career proposal from the semiconductor company JETC. The offer included a director position at a U.S. research lab and a multi-billion-dollar budget, presenting flawless terms. Yet, Dr. Cho felt hesitation, given JETC was a Japanese company and the recent history of liberation. Dr. Cho Young-dae wistfully wished for a better offer from a Korean company just as his phone began to ring. He answered, expecting another usual call, and confirmed his identity as Hyun Sangyoon on the other end introduced himself. Hyun Sangyoon stated he was calling from the Semiconductor Task Force at Sunghyun Electronics in Korea. Dr. Cho Young-dae angrily cut him off, declaring, "I'm not interested," and slammed down the phone. The crackling fire in the fireplace provided a moment of quiet after Dr. Cho's outburst. Hyun Sangyoon calmly asked if Dr. Cho was really not interested, to which Dr. Cho reaffirmed his disinterest. Hyun Sangyoon then abruptly ended the call, leaving Dr. Cho Young-dae utterly surprised and confused. Dr. Cho Young-dae sat bewildered, surrounded by question marks, unable to comprehend the unusual brevity of the conversation. Back at the office, Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk, beaming with excitement, was asked by Manager So Byung-hwa about the call's outcome. Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk simply stated that Dr. Cho had said he was not interested, leaving Manager So Byung-hwa stunned. Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk internally feigned disappointment, sighing that, "I guess IT didn't work." He then humbly blamed his own lack of ability, despite the team's trust, as Manager Go Hak-jun listened with concern. Assistant Manager Cho Mi-yeon proposed a more direct approach, suggesting they go to the U.S. to meet Dr. Cho in person. Manager Go Hak-jun enthusiastically cheered for Sangyoon, expressing confidence in his ability. Manager So Byung-hwa also hoped for just one more chance, but Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk called his name sternly. Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk confronted Manager So Byung-hwa, reminding him that the matter was entirely left to him. Manager So Byung-hwa nervously suggested another phone call to Dr. Cho, rather than simply waiting. Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk aggressively pressed Manager So Byung-hwa for an affirmation of trust, repeating, "You trust me, right?" He then calmly advised against overcalling Dr. Cho, suggesting patience and stating, "Haste makes waste, as they say." Manager So Byung-hwa agreed to monitor Dr. Cho's situation instead, to which Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk replied affirmatively. Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk's internal monologue revealed his true, cunning intention. "From the very beginning, I didn't have the slightest intention of making this work." Narration highlighted that if he truly wanted to save the project, Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk would have gone to the US to recruit Dr. Cho politely. Instead, narration clarified that he was just polite enough to secure a rejection, ending the conversation with a single phone call. Narration dramatically revealed Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk's sole objective: failure. The scene shifted to an exterior view of a two-story house at night. A hand held an old-fashioned telephone receiver, expressing surprise. Dr. Cho Youngdae, holding the phone, wondered about this fresh shock. Dr. Cho Youngdae internally acknowledged that he should be angry, but surprisingly wasn't. He reflected on past experiences with Korean companies that would bow and scrape initially, but then hesitate the moment research was brought up. Dr. Cho Youngdae found their approach two-faced, contrasting it with the young man's directness. Impressed, Dr. Cho Youngdae likened the young man's decisiveness and confidence to an American style. Dr. Cho Youngdae resolved to research Sunghyun, the company the young man claimed to be from. A few days later, the narrative transitioned to the Semiconductor Task Force office in Gangnam. Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk calmly worked at his desk as Manager So Byung-hwa tried to get his attention from behind a glass partition. Manager So Byung-hwa rushed forward, excitedly calling out to Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk. Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk reminded Manager So Byung-hwa to use his proper title, but Manager So Byung-hwa apologized, explaining his rush, and asked if something was wrong. Manager So Byung-hwa excitedly announced, "Great news," surprising Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk. Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk internally pondered the nature of this great news. Manager So Byung-hwa revealed that Dr. Cho was interested in signing with them, prompting surprised reactions from colleagues Manager Go Hak-jun and Assistant Manager Cho Mi-yeon. Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk slumped in his chair, sweating in shock and disbelief, thinking, "No. This can't be happening." A vibrant, celebratory fantasy sequence unfolded, with Manager Go Hak-jun attributing the success to Sangyoon's splendid achievement, while Dr. Cho Youngdae watched from a throne-like chair. In the fantasy, Assistant Manager Cho Mi-yeon tearfully praised Sangyoon as the future of their team. Manager Go Hak-jun, also in the fantasy, loudly declared his unwavering belief in Associate Sangyoon. Manager So Byung-hwa cried tears of joy in the fantasy sequence, while Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk looked on in shock. Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk's internal turmoil grew, questioning why Dr. Cho was interested and expressing panic over his unexpected move. Manager So Byung-hwa then informed Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk that Dr. Cho had requested rather demanding conditions, prompting an eager, "What are they?" from Lee Byum-suk. Manager So Byung-hwa revealed Dr. Cho's first condition, the establishment of a semiconductor research institute. Hesitantly, Manager So Byung-hwa began to reveal another demanding condition, which Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk eagerly prompted him to continue. Manager So Byung-hwa disclosed Dr. Cho's extensive financial demands, an annual research budget of at least $5 million, guaranteed for over $50 million for 10 years, deeming it something they could hardly accept, but Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk internally thought, "Perfect." Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk looked shocked and confused, outwardly asking, "Pardon?" Hyun Sangyoon asserted his authority, stating the matter was entirely left to him, declared they would accept the demands, and took full responsibility. Hyun Sangyoon smirked cunningly, realizing, "I can't believe things are working out like this," as narration mentioned there is always a way out. Hyun Sangyoon jubilantly reveled in the perfect opportunity to lose over $50 million in 10 years, surrounded by falling dollar bills. Chairman Park Byum-shik of Yongsan Group reacted with a furious thud, hearing that Dr. Cho was potentially going to Sunghyun. Chairman Park Do-won, Yongsan Group vice chairman, informed him that the move was not finalized, but talks with Sunghyun Electronics had been positive, and the chairman's final approval was still pending. Chairman Park Byum-shik anxiously asked if they could still recruit Dr. Cho, to which Chairman Park Do-won replied that it might be difficult. Enraged, Chairman Park Byum-shik slammed his hands on the desk, concluding that Dr. Cho was definitively going to Sunghyun. Chairman Park Byum-shik then inquired about Vikron, learning from Chairman Park Do-won that they would provide production technology but demand massive royalty payments, frustrating him deeply. Chairman Park Byum-shik gritted his teeth, expressing his growing frustration with a deep sigh. He lamented his inability to build a true Korean semiconductor company with Dr. Cho due to the board's focus on immediate profits, forcing them to work with Vikron for now. Chairman Park Byum-shik, still puzzled, questioned how Sunghyun had managed to win Dr. Cho over, prompting Chairman Park Do-won to prepare an explanation. Chairman Park Do-won dramatically revealed that Hyun Sangyoon, the youngest son of Sunghyun's vice chairman, was responsible for Dr. Cho's recruitment. Chairman Park Byum-shik, unfamiliar with the name, asked who Hyun Sangyoon was, and Chairman Park Do-won reminded him of the grandson who went to Hankook University that Sunghyun's chairman had often bragged about. Recalling the bragged-about grandson, Chairman Park Byum-shik expressed surprise that that kid was already working for the company. Chairman Park Do-won further detailed Hyun Sangyoon's impressive reputation at both school and work, even mentioning his concurrent study of semiconductors and law. Chairman Park Byum-shik expressed disbelief and fluster, questioning how a young punk like Hyun Sangyoon could have recruited Dr. Cho. Chairman Park Byum-shik called out to his vice chairman, who promptly responded. He asked Chairman Park Do-won about his son, Jil, and his enrollment at Hankook University in the Department of Sociology. Chairman Park Byum-shik suggested that Jil could also achieve similar success, as a document with Dr. Cho's name was symbolically crossed out. With grim determination, Chairman Park Byum-shik decided to secure an early position at the company for Jil, ensuring he would try his hand at the business world. Chairman Park Do-won agreed, assuring the chairman that Jil would do well and not fall behind, as the chairman, satisfied, instructed him to give Jil a suitable position. Chairman Park Byum-shik resolved to remember Hyun Sangyoon's name, seeing him as a new target or rival. While engrossed in work, the midterm exam had unexpectedly crept up on the narrator. Unimagined, fiery assistant manager Lee Byum-suk enthusiastically encouraged someone for an exam, his eyes glowing and fists clenched. Hyun Sangyoon, holding a spiral-bound notebook titled Lee Byum-suk's Exam Prep Notes, expressed confusion, wondering what it was. Assistant manager Lee proudly presented the study guide he had painstakingly created, surprising Hyun Sangyoon, who questioned the unsolicited effort. A chibi assistant manager Lee confidently praised Hyun Sangyoon's potential to excel, while a chibi Hyun Sangyoon responded with sarcasm. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk shouted encouragement to Hyun Sangyoon as he walked towards his very first college exam. The narrator emphasized the importance of achieving a good grade on this inaugural exam. Hyun Sangyoon internally clarified his true goal, to score just high enough to avoid expulsion, deliberately messing up that precise amount. The narration revealed that Hyun Sangyoon and assistant manager Lee had hastily conducted a mock exam the day before. Hyun Sangyoon anxiously asked assistant manager Lee about his score from the mock exam, as assistant manager Lee marked the paper with a soft suk. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk began to announce the score with evident surprise and excitement in his eye. Assistant manager Lee joyfully revealed Hyun Sangyoon's score of 95, declaring it incredible and greatly shocking Hyun Sangyoon. Assistant manager Lee praised Hyun Sangyoon's amazing score on advanced questions, but Hyun Sangyoon dismissively claimed it felt too easy. Hyun Sangyoon internally reflected on intentionally getting question 9 wrong, as it looked the hardest, yet assistant manager Lee hadn't suspected a thing, making him question its actual difficulty. Hyun Sangyoon plotted to deliberately select specific questions on the actual midterm and get them all wrong. Hyun Sangyoon imagined his enraged grandfather, the chairman, chastising him for poor grades and disowning him with a small building. Hyun Sangyoon licked his lips with satisfaction, pleased with his imagined future. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk, confused by Hyun Sangyoon's strange demeanor, tentatively called out to him. Hyun Sangyoon called out to assistant manager Lee, who responded with a nervous and questioning yes. Hyun Sangyoon, with a determined expression and a purple glow, ordered assistant manager Lee to immediately find a reputable herbal clinic and procure chongmyangtang, a traditional medicine for focus. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk expressed his surprise and confusion at the sudden request for chongmyangtang. Hyun Sangyoon instructed assistant manager Lee to order enough chongmyangtang for the entire freshman class, which greatly shocked assistant manager Lee due to the potential cost. With a sly grin and a demonic creature behind him, Hyun Sangyoon claimed benevolent intentions to help his classmates, causing assistant manager Lee to cry out in pain from a blinding light. Hyun Sangyoon, depicted as an angelic figure with wings and a halo, invited adoring students to follow him. Bathed in brilliant golden light, assistant manager Lee Byum-suk became completely convinced by Hyun Sangyoon's seemingly benevolent intentions. A chibi Hyun Sangyoon smugly accepted the narrator's praise, which lauded him as a great leader and the future of Sunghyun, while a chibi assistant manager Lee adored him. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk enthusiastically saluted, declaring his immediate intention to raid every reputable Eastern medicine clinic for the herbal medicine. A loud kwang sounded as assistant manager Lee presumably left quickly, leaving Hyun Sangyoon at his desk, looking at papers. Two young men were seen eating from packets, presumably chongmyangtang, while studying diligently at their desks. Another young man continued eating from a packet while studying, alongside other students in the busy classroom. A slight deolkik sound indicated a door moving slightly ajar. The male teacher asked if everyone was present, and the students collectively affirmed. The male teacher announced that he would hand out the exam papers immediately, and the test would begin right away. The male teacher instructed students to prepare for the exam by putting away all items except writing utensils and legal code books. Hyun Sangyoon slyly grinned, thinking he would perfectly execute his plan to deliberately get difficult questions wrong. Hyun Sangyoon looked down at his exam paper with a confused expression. Hyun Sangyoon expressed shock and realized that something was terribly wrong, his face drenched in sweat. Hyun Sangyoon stared wide-eyed at the exam paper, overwhelmed by its perceived ease. Frustrated, Hyun Sangyoon realized the questions were so easy he couldn't even intentionally get them wrong. His hand instinctively marked correct answers with a bingo sound, confirming his frustration that the exam was too obvious for deliberate failure. Hyun Sangyoon, with a desperate resolve, quickly changed his strategy, deciding to simply not answer the questions. To prevent his hand from instinctively writing correct answers, Hyun Sangyoon resolved to skip all multiple-choice questions entirely. Weighing the implications of a blank test, Hyun Sangyoon decided to focus solely on essay questions, feigning insufficient time for the multiple-choice section. Hyun Sangyoon wrote on his exam paper with a sagic sound, smugly thinking he was a genius for his strategy. 1 week later, Hyun Sangyoon expressed surprise upon hearing that the president of Hankook University wanted to meet with him. An assistant confirmed that the university president desired an urgent discussion specifically regarding Hyun Sangyoon. The chairman, Hyun Sangyoon's grandfather, smiled with satisfaction, assuming the urgent meeting meant good news. The chairman speculated that the university president wanted to deliver Hyun Sangyoon's exam results in person, likening it to a parent-teacher meeting. The chairman responded with a rhetorical, "What do you mean, what?" to his assistant's query. The chairman then instructed his assistant to arrange a dinner with President Chun and prepare a suitable gift. The narration revealed that Hyun Sangyoon's midterm exam results were out, showing his grades were strictly average as planned. Hyun Sangyoon examined his report card, noting his deliberate 0 on multiple-choice questions and a perfect score on essays, hoping to lower his grandfather's expectations. The narration stated that President Chun had already visited the chairman because of Hyun Sangyoon's results, though the details of their conversation remained unknown to Hyun Sangyoon. President Chun awkwardly expressed embarrassment and concern about Hyun Sangyoon's exam performance, particularly his failure to attempt multiple-choice questions. The chairman dismissed the university's embarrassment, stating it merely reflected his grandson's limited capabilities and expressing his own shame. The chairman declared his intention to ensure Hyun Sangyoon's graduation before setting him up with a small business, effectively removing him from his grand plans, a clear and obvious outcome. The narration highlighted that his score would disappoint both the university and his grandfather, as a telephone to Duryung rang, startling Hyun Sangyoon. Hyun Sangyoon's eyes widened with worry as he realized his grandfather was calling. Hyun Sangyoon answered the phone, confirming his identity to his grandfather, who then mentioned hearing about him from President Chun. The chairman expressed deep disappointment in Hyun Sangyoon's exam performance, to which Hyun Sangyoon responded with a widely smiling, relieved yes, pleased his plan seemed to be working. Hyun Sangyoon reveled in his grandfather's disappointment, celebrating the rare instance of hearing disappointed directed at him. Hyun Sangyoon feigned apology, claiming he was so sorry, while his grandfather asked how he could do this to him. Hyun Sangyoon continued his feigned self-deprecation with a sly smile, but his grandfather abruptly silenced him. The chairman angrily stated that President Chun had told him everything. The chairman then revealed that President Chun had praised Hyun Sangyoon's rare talent for the legal world, greatly shocking Hyun Sangyoon, who questioned what was happening. The chairman angrily questioned how Hyun Sangyoon managed to study law so extensively while working, making Hyun Sangyoon realize something was deeply wrong. Hyun Sangyoon was rendered speechless and stunned by his grandfather's unexpected words, standing motionless amidst swirling blue lines. The chairman furiously declared that Hyun Sangyoon would not enter the legal profession and must, under any circumstances, take over Sunghyun. Surrounded by the sounds of shattering, *Weijangchang*, Hyun Sangyoon broke down in despair, realizing his plan had backfired and desperately wishing for his small building. The recap for this chapter was brought to viewers by the Vortex Scans team. The episode began by displaying its title, The Chairman Who Wants to Play and Eat. From a dimly lit room, Hyun Sangyoon, looking stressed, denied his grandfather's accusations that he found the semiconductor project boring or that he forced himself to do it just to please him. The chairman, appearing furious, yelled into his phone, questioning if Hyun Sangyoon planned to abandon him to run the company alone. He sarcastically suggested Hyun Sangyoon intended to become the prosecutor general or chief justice, a notion Hyun Sangyoon tearfully and vehemently denied, claiming he did not care about such things. The chairman then stated he understood Hyun Sangyoon's true intentions, asking if he only answered short answer questions to save face and get noticed, leaving Hyun Sangyoon internally questioning, "What do you mean by that?" He continued, relaying that President Chun believed Hyun Sangyoon left the rest blank on purpose to yield the scholarship to his peers and was deeply impressed by his thoughtfulness, wanting to recruit him. The chairman laughed heartily, explaining that President Chun was absolutely thrilled, which put him in an awkward position. He then grew angry, stating he lost count of how many times he told President Chun his grandson would never become a mere legal professional, and the thought alone made his blood boil. With fiery rage, the chairman commanded Hyun Sangyoon to remain at Sunghyun, no matter what. He then used an emotional threat, asking if Hyun Sangyoon wanted to see his grandfather die of anger, to which Hyun Sangyoon pleaded with him not to say such things. The chairman delivered his final ultimatum, demanding Hyun Sangyoon not to do it if he did not want to hear about his anger. Hyun Sangyoon, looking distressed yet relieved, agreed to keep that in mind, immediately pacifying the chairman, who responded with a pleased "Really? Good, you must do that." The chairman dismissed him with a peaceful farewell, and Hyun Sangyoon hung up the vintage rotary phone with a soft click. With a quiet swish, Hyun Sangyoon turned and walked away from the desk. He stood hunched over a desk, letting out a heavy whoosh of a sigh, appearing dejected. Narration revealed that Hyun Sangyoon's half-baked exam, where he only answered the short answer questions, resulted in disastrous scores. Instead of merely disappointing them, he inadvertently became the perfect target for powerful figures like the chairman and President Chun, who loomed behind him with satisfied smiles. The narrator concluded that his exam strategy was a total failure. Hyun Sangyoon resolved to find another way now, with the image of Dr. Cho Youngdae appearing in his mind. After the disastrous midterm exam, the university successfully wrapped up its library completion ceremony. In recognition of his generous scholarship donations, the chairman, wearing a graduation cap, even received an honorary doctorate from Hankook University alongside President Go Muyol. Meanwhile, students on campus discussed Hyun Sangyoon, with one young man exclaiming that he got a perfect score on the short answer questions, another calling him a genius, and a third mentioning Professor Min's praise of his thesis-level work. A second young man, looking confused, then wondered why Hyun Sangyoon had not answered the multiple-choice questions. As questions followed, one student suggested he left them blank on purpose to yield the scholarship, another called him a total angel, and others praised Sunghyun for incentive bonuses, leading Hyun Sangyoon to make a timeout gesture in embarrassment as the narrative spiraled in an unexpected direction. With the scholarships, the Chongmyong-tang, and the library completion all aligning, the misunderstanding spiraled completely out of control, as students showered praise on Hyun Sangyoon, calling him the best and crediting him for their improved grades. At school, Hyun Sangyoon was shocked to find his peers looking up to him as if he were some living saint, their faces alight with gratitude. The professors and even President Go Muyol began watching Hyun Sangyoon with intense interest, making school feel suffocating for him due to that single exam. Hyun Sangyoon realized that even the prestigious Hankook University degree his grandfather received was apparently all part of President Chun's scheme to drag him into legal circles, causing him to exasperatedly wonder why they would not just leave him alone. For now, he decided to put the exhausting school behind him, recognizing that the next day, marked on a calendar as Dr. Cho's arrival, was an important day. An airport announcement filled the air, directing passengers from New Jersey to claim their baggage and proceed to the exit. Hyun Sangyoon stood ready in a light blue suit next to Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk, who held a "Welcome Mr. Cho" sign in the bustling airport terminal. Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk, turning to Hyun Sangyoon, asked if he could pose a question. He expressed concern, asking if Dr. Cho's schedule was not a bit too tight immediately after his arrival. Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk politely suggested that Dr. Cho should rest at the hotel after his long journey. Hyun Sangyoon, slightly frustrated, dismissed the idea, stating Dr. Cho must have rested plenty on the plane and saw no reason for further rest. Hyun Sangyoon, with a serious and determined expression, revealed his intention: Dr. Cho needs to work for what we invested in him, confirming he had intentionally set a grueling schedule for Dr. Cho Youngdae, who had not even adjusted to the jet lag, especially after being paid a fortune. A handwritten schedule detailed Dr. Cho's packed itinerary, including a Yongin Research Center tour, a visit to the Gyeonggi governor, and a visit to Samsung Electronics. The narration emphasized that from the moment Dr. Cho stepped out of the airport, there would be no rest, as he would be touring every single semiconductor site and group headquarters. Despite Dr. Cho being a world-renowned semiconductor expert, Hyun Sangyoon narrated that he had not prepared any press or a grand welcoming ceremony, illustrating the simple, almost stark, welcome with a black and white image of Dr. Cho shaking hands amidst implied camera flashes. Hyun Sangyoon pointed out that only he, a mere employee, and Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk were there to greet Dr. Cho. In his mind, Dr. Cho comically imagined Hyun Sangyoon as a tyrant overworking him with an absurd schedule, even picturing himself being grabbed and yelled at. Dr. Cho continued his internal rant, wondering if the lack of welcome and packed schedule before he could even unpack was going too far. He comically envisioned himself trying to escape back to America in a taxi, yelling that he did not come for this, only to be held back by an unseen person, reinforcing the absurd schedule and shabby arrival. Hyun Sangyoon, with a sinister smirk and an evil grin, declared, "There's no better plan to make Dr. Cho Youngdae escape." Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk then announced that Dr. Cho appeared to be coming out now. Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk called out Dr. Cho's name, startling him. Both Hyun Sangyoon and assistant manager Lee Byum-suk waved enthusiastically, with Hyun Sangyoon calling Dr. Cho over. As footsteps echoed, *Giabik*, assistant manager Lee Byum-suk thanked Dr. Cho for his long trip, and Dr. Cho acknowledged their prior phone conversation. With a smooth gesture, ****, Hyun Sangyoon formally introduced himself and extended his hand for a handshake, stating it was a pleasure to meet him. Dr. Cho and Hyun Sangyoon shook hands. Dr. Cho introduced himself as David Cho, or rather, Cho Youngdae, to which Hyun Sangyoon welcomed him back to Korea. Dr. Cho looked around, surprised by the unusually quiet airport and the absence of anyone else besides the two of them. Hyun Sangyoon, with a calm and slightly cunning smile, explained that they had skipped the welcoming ceremony due to time constraints. Hyun Sangyoon instructed Dr. Cho to leave his luggage with assistant manager Lee Byum-suk and head out, prompting a questioning look from Dr. Cho. As footsteps sounded, ***Giabik**, Dr. Cho asked if they were heading to the hotel first, but Hyun Sangyoon dismissively replied no. Hyun Sangyoon informed Dr. Cho that he had a packed schedule for the day, eliciting a surprised exclamation mark above Dr. Cho's head. With a villainous smile, Hyun Sangyoon detailed Dr. Cho's extensive and demanding itinerary, beginning with a 2-hour drive to the Semiconductor Research Institute for an inspection and appointment, followed by a tour of Sunghyun affiliates, and then inspections of Sunghyun Electronics' second headquarters and the main group headquarters in Seoul, confirming it was an absurd schedule by anyone's standards. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk, his face cast in shadow, expressed sympathy for Dr. Cho, anticipating he would be dragged around without rest the moment he landed. Hyun Sangyoon justified his actions, stating it could not be helped, as he had his own reasons, like the Gangnam building. His eyes narrowed with a calculating, sinister smile. Hyun Sangyoon, smiling and gesturing, urged Dr. Cho to hurry, leading the way through the airport. Dr. Cho, looking surprised and overwhelmed, pondered the lack of a welcoming ceremony and the immediate trip to the research center. His face tight with shock and rage, Dr. Cho asked if Hyun Sangyoon was serious about that schedule. Hyun Sangyoon politely apologized for the schedule with a closed-eye smile, while internally, his hand clenched into a glowing fist of determination, ***. Dr. Cho, much to Hyun Sangyoon's surprise, unexpectedly beamed and exclaimed, "Bravo!" Hyun Sangyoon, utterly bewildered, questioned internally, Bravo, wondering if there was some other meaning of bravo that he did not know about as Dr. Cho happily patted his shoulder. Dr. Cho Youngdae enthusiastically praised Hyun Sangyoon, exclaiming, "Bravo," leaving Hyun Sangyoon utterly bewildered and questioning. Hyun Sangyoon's mind raced, wondering if there was some other meaning to bravo that he was unaware of, picturing a smirking gangster. Dr. Cho Youngdae delighted in Hyun Sangyoon's supposed insight, declaring that Hyun Sangyoon knew his mind so well, while Hyun Sangyoon recoiled in shock. Dr. Cho Youngdae appreciated the absence of a loud, brown-nosing welcome party and a boring hotel schedule, which was a stark contrast to typical formal press events he'd endured before. He spoke emotionally, tears welling in his eyes, about having encountered many companies but none that worked with such passion for semiconductors. Hyun Sangyoon reacted with extreme surprise as Dr. Cho Youngdae directed his intense praise solely at him, asking, "Huh? What?" Dr. Cho Youngdae, feeling his old passion reignited, energetically declared they had no time to lose and rushed ahead, leaving a confused Hyun Sangyoon to wonder how he got so far so quickly. It was hard to believe he was an elderly man who had just landed, as Dr. Cho Youngdae dashed through the locker-lined hallway with boundless energy, laughing loudly. Hyun Sangyoon, in chibi form, found himself struggling to keep pace with the ecstatic Dr. Cho Youngdae, who was overflowing with renewed vigor. Dr. Cho Youngdae continued to overflow with energy, shaking hands with an older man, appearing revitalized, while a spectral image of an exhausted Hyun Sangyoon hovered nearby. He seemed practically overflowing with energy, his expression focused and determined. Their exhaustive schedule finally concluded at 10 o'clock that night, leaving Hyun Sangyoon utterly drained and slumped in the car seat with an exhausted sigh. Hyun Sangyoon, in despair, lamented his perceived failure, crying that he couldn't believe he had failed again. A series of old newspaper clippings detailed Sunghyun Electronics' success, announcing the opening of a global semiconductor research institute with Dr. Cho Youngdae as director and the launch of a new development team to accelerate their entry into the semiconductor race. The news highlighted Gyeongsang and Gyeosan as the country's top two electronics giants, showcasing their modern corporate buildings. Despite their impressive facilities, the companies fundamentally lacked the technology to design 64K DRAM. This technological gap forced them to spend fortunes acquiring semiconductor companies, as symbolized by a briefcase overflowing with money. Alternatively, they had to rely heavily on foreign technology, a situation that left one man in despair as others celebrated their success. However, with director Cho Youngdae on their side, Sunghyun surged past its competitors in the semiconductor war, instantly joining the leading pack. Hyun Sangyoon reflected that the semiconductor business was now beyond his control, acknowledging that if they hadn't started yet, he might have tried something. He continued walking, realizing he couldn't ruin the successful venture at this stage. The group's very survival was now on the line, Hyun Sangyoon mused, visualizing assistant manager Lee Byum-suk dramatically fired and realizing he would be kicked out with absolutely nothing if he messed up. He paused, deciding to give up on sabotaging the semiconductor business, concluding that he needed to find another way to escape his grandfather's spotlight. Hyun Sangyoon noticed a banner proclaiming the Hankook University Festival, wondering if his university also had one. He walked on campus, observing the festival preparations and thinking that Hankook University must also have a festival. He overheard a young man telling his friend not to hold his breath about the festival. The other young man tried to be positive, but the first one sighed, insisting his friend had no idea. The young man then asked if his friend had heard of the Three Great Fools of Hankook University. He explained the first fool was someone who got off at Hankook University entrance station, depicting confused chibi students. The second fool, he continued, was someone who bragged about ranking first in high school, showing one chibi student boasting to an unimpressed classmate. Finally, he declared the third fool to be someone who took the school festival seriously, as they walked past tents being set up. The second young man tried to maintain a positive outlook, but the first scoffed, recalling that last year they just grilled pork belly and implying this year would be no different. Hyun Sangyoon pondered the concept of people taking the festival seriously, admitting that until then, he had zero interest in it. Later, in a lecture hall, a male teacher called out names for attendance, and two students responded. The teacher then called Hyun Sangyoon's name, to which he raised his hand and confirmed his presence. The male teacher then informed a shocked Hyun Sangyoon that the university president wanted to have lunch with him after class, asking if he was free. Both Hyun Sangyoon and his classmates were astonished by the sudden invitation from the university president. Hyun Sangyoon, distraught, expressed his extreme frustration, wishing everyone would just leave him alone. Determined to find a way out, Hyun Sangyoon referenced the Three Great Fools of Hankook University. He focused on the idea of someone who took the Hankook University Festival seriously, a realization dawning in his eyes. With a confident smirk, Hyun Sangyoon declared, "I won't be going," likely referring to the lunch invitation. President Lim Do-won responded calmly, stating he understood and they could reschedule, but still asked why Hyun Sangyoon couldn't make it. Hyun Sangyoon confidently replied that he needed to go prepare for the festival. His classmates reacted with confusion and surprise, wondering where he was going and why he would be preparing for the festival. Hyun Sangyoon stood up from his desk, declaring he could no longer stand by and watch the Hankook University Festival's terrible reputation grow. He dramatically proclaimed his intention to take responsibility and change everything about the festival, except for its name. The scene shifted to a bustling, crowded food alley in Sungcheon, filled with people and food stalls. A close-up showed a plate of boiled pork slices, accompanied by the promotional offer that they were free if one ordered for two or more. Chopsticks lifted a large, succulent piece of meat from a dish, ready to be eaten. One Dong-shik, happily eating, explained that this delicious food was exactly why he traveled all the way out there. He then suggested trying the gukbap, but his companion informed him that his phone was ringing. Won Dong-shik reached for his old-fashioned mobile phone, wondering if it was the editor-in-chief calling. He answered, identifying himself as Won Dong-shik from Dongsun Daily while still enjoying his meal. Hyun Sangyoon greeted reporter Won Dong-shik, who was surprised by the unexpected call, asking if it was truly Mr. Hyun Sangyoon. After confirming his identity, Hyun Sangyoon declared he had a scoop for the reporter, causing Won Dong-shik to put down his spoon. Won Dong-shik, excited, urged Hyun Sangyoon to continue, as Hyun Sangyoon revealed Sunghyun Group would be fully sponsoring the Hankook University Festival. Won Dong-shik hesitated, finding the news more suited for a school newsletter, but Hyun Sangyoon immediately countered by asking if he knew the Troika. Hyun Sangyoon elaborated that he was going to bring all three of the country's best rockers, Jo Pil-yong, Lee Uk, and Jang Won-roar, to the festival, showing images of them performing. Won Dong-shik was utterly shocked, questioning if their appearance was confirmed, to which Hyun Sangyoon calmly stated he was about to start preparing. Flustered, Won Dong-shik exclaimed that Hyun Sangyoon hadn't even finished locking in their casting yet, but Hyun Sangyoon confidently countered by asking if he truly thought it was impossible for him, Hyun Sangyoon. Won Dong-shik reluctantly conceded, stating he couldn't publish an article before anything was confirmed, but Hyun Sangyoon convinced him to trust him and write a big story, which the reporter then began to jot down. The very next day, the front page of the Dongsun Daily newspaper prominently displayed a headline about Sunghyun Group successfully recruiting the Troika for the Hankook University Festival. A hand held the newspaper open, confirming that the stage for the festival was now set. Hyun Sangyoon smirked confidently, looking directly at the viewer, declaring that nobody could stop his plan now. Hyun Sangyoon sat attentively at a desk, engrossed in a book within a well-lit office filled with tall bookshelves. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk, holding papers, approached a book holding Hyun Sangyoon, expressing concern. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk pointed to a newspaper spread, expressing his confusion and disagreement with the plan. He questioned the strategy of spreading rumors about casting singers before they were actually secured. Hyun Sangyoon, closing his book with a confident tap, explained that building anticipation first created a bigger impact. He elaborated, confidently stating it boosted student morale, grabbed media attention, and enhanced Sunghyun's image. Assistant manager Lee Byum-suk's mind raced, imagining the terrifying consequences if the plan failed and the chairman, depicted with menacing red eyes, discovered it. Hyun Sangyoon casually inquired about the chairman's safe arrival in Germany, leaving assistant manager Lee Byum-suk speechless. A graphic explained that a few days prior, the chairman and President Lim had departed for Germany to inspect the electronics market. The narration revealed the chairman's stubbornness, showing him enraged as he insisted on personally inspecting the market despite an executive's timid suggestion, thus making the current place Hyun Sangyoon's playground. Hyun Sangyoon reassured assistant manager Lee Byum-suk, claiming his actions were a good deed to boost student morale and that his grandfather would likely be proud upon his return. With a wide smile and a clenched fist, Hyun Sangyoon declared, "Study hard, play hard," as the right way for Sunghyun to nurture talent. However, Hyun Sangyoon's inner thoughts, marked by narrowed, cunning eyes, contradicted his cheerful demeanor with, "Like hell it is." The narration then clarified that the chairman neither knew nor cared about the Troika or school festivals, showing him casually watching an old TV. Hyun Sangyoon's true intention was to let the rumor of the festival spread uncontrollably, hinting at a manipulative plan against the chairman. He imagined the chairman's furious reaction upon hearing the news in Germany, picturing him exclaiming, "What? That brat Sangyoon is using Sunghyun's name to book singers while I'm away." The imagined chairman then exploded in anger, throwing papers and ordering Hyun Sangyoon to kick him out immediately, for slacking off. Hyun Sangyoon smirked, his eyes gleaming with cunning, confident that the chairman would react exactly what he'll say. A sudden nervousness washed over Hyun Sangyoon, as he wondered if he had made too much of a risky move, noticing assistant manager Lee Byum-suk's suspicious gaze. Hyun Sangyoon announced his intention to head to school and check out the venue. He then delegated the task of casting singers to assistant manager Lee Byum-suk, who was shocked by the request to use the company's name. Hyun Sangyoon politely declined to handle the task himself, citing his student status as a reason for lacking time. He further explained that for proper protocol and respect, contact needed to come from the Sunghyun Secretariat. Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk expressed his deep concern about taking action under the company's name without the chairman's permission. Hyun Sangyoon gently patted Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk's shoulder in an attempt to reassure him. He flattered Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk, stating that only someone of his caliber could handle the task and that external affairs fell under the Secretariat's jurisdiction. With a bright smile and a thumbs up, Hyun Sangyoon boosted Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk's ego, calling him the Secretariat ACE and expressing his belief in him. Hyun Sangyoon made a final plea to Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk before leaving, emphasizing the remaining week and asking him to work your magic. He gave an overly enthusiastic send-off, sparkling with cheer, proclaiming, "You can do it, Assistant Manager Lee." Assistant Manager Lee Byum-suk was left utterly dumbfounded by the situation, a small bird perched above his head. After departing, Hyun Sangyoon revealed a cunning smirk, clearly pleased with his manipulative maneuver. The narration noted that his aunt, Hyun Hee-jae, president of Sunghyun Department Store, was the first to discover his activities, questioning if her nephew was the one behind this. A man in a dark suit respectfully confirmed the information to Hyun Hee-jae. With a chilling smirk while applying lipstick, Hyun Hee-jae dismissed the situation as the most bizarre, unheard-of nonsense. She then ordered her executive director to call the corporation as she closed her makeup compact with a click. The rumors about Hyun Sangyoon quickly spread through the family, reaching President Hyun Sung-jae, who mockingly asked if he should inform their father on Hyun Hee-jae's behalf. Hyun Hee-jae abruptly ended the call, placing the phone receiver back into its cradle with a thud. President Hyun Sung-jae reacted with annoyance as he listened to the dial tone, the phone still held to his ear. Calling Hyun Hee-jae a sly little brat, in his thoughts, President Hyun Sung-jae put down the phone with a click. He then looked intently at the newspaper featuring the three musicians, contemplating the unfolding situation. President Hyun Sung-jae was seen working in his office, observed from outside through a window with blinds. As the rumor continued to spread, President Hyun Sung-jae decided to act, beginning to dial a number on a rotary phone. With a devious smirk, President Hyun Sung-jae expressed his satisfaction, noting that things had started moving exactly as he had hoped. The scene shifted to an older man smiling amidst a display of retro electronic gadgets. Various household electronic appliances, including a washing machine, dryer, and fans, were neatly displayed in a brightly lit room. The narration then transported viewers to the bustling Consumer Electronics Fair in Frankfurt, Germany, filled with executives and display booths. At an exhibition booth, the chairman sternly questioned President Lim Do-won about the readiness of preparations. The chairman called out to President Lim Do-won, who responded with extreme nervousness, "Why yes, sir." The chairman, looking intense and demanding, inquired about the Sunghyun Electronics booth and ordered President Lim Do-won to lead the way. However, upon their arrival, the Sunghyun booth appeared deserted, poorly set up, and disappointing, a stark contrast to expectations. The chairman became visibly enraged by the sight of the booth, his fury radiating as President Lim Do-won trembled in fear in the background. The chairman's furious voice echoed as he called out, "Lim Do-won." President Lim Do-won, terrified, responded with a trembling, "Yes, sir," standing at rigid attention. The chairman angrily demanded to know what was wrong with their booth, criticizing its dusty, tucked-away location. He furiously slammed his hand down on a stack of papers, questioning if President Lim Do-won had even observed what competitors were doing. Contorted in anger, the chairman yelled that such poor performance tarnished the name of both Sunghyun and South Korea, demanding if President Lim Do-won understood. President Lim Do-won deeply apologized, but the chairman dismissed him, throwing papers in frustration and ordering him to quit if all he could do was apologize. With deep disappointment, the chairman lamented their inability to challenge the semiconductor market with such poor performance. The chairman, utterly frustrated, sat with his arms crossed, sighing and regretting that if he had just stayed in Seoul, he would never have known about this pathetic state of affairs. An assistant entered, announcing a call from Korea for the chairman, startling President Lim Do-won. The chairman, looking curious, asked who was calling and was informed it was President Hyun Sangyoon of Sunghyun Corporation. Expressing concern, the chairman wondered why Sungjae was calling at this hour, fearing something had happened to the company, as his assistant urged him to take the urgent call. The chairman authoritatively ordered everyone to leave U.S., prompting President Lim Do-won to bow deeply while wishing him rest. President Hyun Sangjae attempted polite small talk, but the enraged chairman immediately demanded he get to the point, as he anticipated a family matter. President Hyun Sangjae, with a smirk, informed the chairman that Sangyoon had caused some trouble while you were away. The chairman reacted with intense surprise upon hearing Sangyoon's name. President Hyun Sangjae reported Sangyoon's bragging about using Sunghyun's name for his school festival, revealing the chairman's ignorance of the Troika. President Hyun Sangjae explained who the Troika were and how Sangyoon had been misusing Sunghyun's name, eliciting a shocked "what?" from the chairman. He further recounted Sangyoon's boastful statements during class, where he claimed he would change everything except the name of the festival. President Hyun Sangjae declared Sangyoon's actions an absolute disgrace to the family, then feigned surprise at the chairman's interjection. The chairman intensely confirmed if Sangyoon had truly said, "I'm going to change everything except the name," which President Hyun Sangjae affirmed. President Hyun Sangjae subtly manipulated the chairman by emphasizing Sangyoon's presumptuous act of using the company name for lowly entertainers without permission. The chairman absorbed the information, his tone indicating a growing realization and potential anger. Old brochures for electronic products, including one for Sunghyun Color 26, lay scattered on a dark surface. Angered by Sangyoon's perceived actions, the chairman sternly declared he certainly deserves a harsh lesson, and ordered all Sunghyun Group executives at vice president rank and above to gather in Frankfurt by tomorrow. The chairman extended the unexpected order to President Hyun Sangjae as well, startling him. President Hyun Sangjae responded with a confused, hesitant yes to the chairman's command, holding some papers. President Hyun Sangjae stood in his office, looking utterly bewildered by the chairman's demand.